I'm David Scandura,
I'm Justus Burkett.
and today we're here to find out, is Mad Max Fury Road the greatest movie ever made?
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Gun fever!
Witness me! A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the whole fucking world.
Woohoo!
I'm David Scandura.
Sorry, I should let you finish.
Joined as always by my co-host and crazy smeg who eats schlanger, Justus Burkett.
Okay, so I don't know if you know the answer to this, but that line specifically, every time I watch this movie, I've never looked it up. I kind of don't want to know the answer, I think. I'm always like, is that invented post-apocalyptic jargon, or is that just regular Australian slang?
I don't know.
I really want it to just be actual Australian slang.
I think so.
Not made up for the movie.
I mean, that's what I want to my heart. I think smeg is, if I had to translate that
Yeah.
for sentence, crazy smeg who eats schlanger, I think what she's saying is crazy piece of dried up cum that
Yes.
eats dick.
Yes. That's sort of what I was thinking as well. And I'm like, the fact that we're both able to translate it could be either thing, right? It could be George Miller being like, what if I make this post-apocalyptic slang for cum and dick? But it could also just be Australian for cum and dick. I love that line. I love that delivery. I love this movie.
Justice, I also adore Academy Award winning
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, I mean, as I was taking notes for this movie and watching it, I was like, weirdly, I think this movie, I don't think it's going to be hard to talk about because I know you and I have a lot to say about this movie, probably. We have a lot of thoughts about this movie. But as I was watching it, I was like, what can you even say about this movie other than, so like, let's just get this out of the way right now because we cannot possibly hone in on every single thing in this movie that is cool, that rocks, that we love, because this podcast would just be 5 hours of you and I saying that every single thing in every single scene rocks and is the coolest shit we've ever seen. So
Yeah.
blanket statement for the rest of the podcast. Just know that every single moment of this movie is the best shit anyone has ever put in a movie. Like, we can just get that out of the way right now.
Yeah.
So we're not going to hit all of those. We might call out like a few little things, but there's going to be a shit ton that we don't hone in on and praise because there's too much. There is too much. It's just, man, what a movie. Holy shit.
What a fucking flick.
Yeah.
Again, Academy Award winning
Yes.
Mad Max Fury Road.
Nominated for Best Picture, did not win.
I feel like there are certain moments in history
Yeah.
where if you just turn things slightly one way or the other, the world as we know it will be totally different.
Yeah.
Things including like John Hinckley Jr. using a gun bigger than a 22. A child not wandering into a gorilla enclosure at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Yes.
And leading to the death of Harambe. Mad Max Fury Road winning Best Picture.
Yeah.
We would have flying cars and world peace and have solved the cure for cancer.
I think what we would have is climate action if that had happened. Because this movie is a feminist film. It is also a big time environmentalist film, I think. And like we'll get into like the themes and stuff. But yeah, I think we would have clean energy right now if Mad Max Fury Road had won Best Picture. David, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah?
I'm great.
I love hearing that.
I'm surprised to say it.
That makes me very happy.
Considering this year's been kind of a shitty year for some reason.
Yeah.
Seems like one thing after another. But I feel like those scenes in a sitcom where like the character's like walking down the street with a spring in his step and whistling along to himself, and then the joke is like he got laid last night.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like, except I'm not going to reveal the details of my sex life.
Whether or not you got laid. Yeah.
I feel like Ebenezer Scrooge at the end of Muppet Christmas Carol singing "Thankful Heart."
Wow.
That's just, I feel like that's been this whole week, is just with a thankful heart. Da, 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 da. There's lots of media that I've been enjoying. I won't dwell on it too long, but I've been playing Grand Theft Auto 4. I've been playing Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah. Fallout New Vegas, by the way, good media recommendation for this week.
Yeah.
Considering the similarities between the Fallout world and the world of this film.
Yeah, Fallout as a franchise would not exist without the Mad Max franchise, probably.
Yeah.
And I've also been listening to lots of country music.
Yeah.
Lots of Johnny and Willie and Merle. I've also spent a lot of money this week, and I don't think that's necessarily related to my mood.
Yeah.
But I've spent quite a lot of money rather frivolously.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, you got to get that on lock, but every once in a while it is nice to treat yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm good. I'm feeling good. How about you?
I'm doing mostly good. I'm not gonna like say anything about it on mic, because I don't feel comfortable doing that. But there have just been like a couple of ups and downs, just like personal stuff that have happened this week. So like sort of mixed bag personal life wise. But overall, I would say I am feeling pretty good. I can't say that I have the spring in my step. I can't say that I'm Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2 when he loses his powers and goes back to being normal, and it's the raindrops are falling on my head, and he's like walking around smiling all goofy, like you. However, I would say this is a good week for me as well overall. So yeah, nothing really special to report. And in terms of media recs, the only thing I prepared for this episode is because we're covering I would say, aggressively Australian film. I would like to recommend something else that is aggressively Australian and continue my punk recommendations, and just say, if you've never listened to the punk band The Chats, go listen to The Chats. It's the most Australian punk music that I have ever heard, and Australia has a big punk scene, but The Chats just, it seems like they've distilled the spirit of their country into 1.5 minute songs perfectly, and I love those boys. So that's my media recommendation for this week.
Grab yourself a 6-pack of Fosters and...
Yep, and get drunk in every pub in Brisbane, baby. Yeah.
Oh, Justus, something just came across my desk.
Yes.
It's time for a Disgusting Shit People News Bulletin.
It certainly is. I was going to do this as well.
Everyone in this movie,
yes,
except for the models. We can just leave it there.
Yeah, every single person in this movie is part of our Disgusting Shit People News Bulletin. This has been a Disgusting Shit People News Bulletin. I'm glad you did that, because I was also going to do that. David, before we get into the film itself, the film being Mad Max Fury Road from 2015, I want to hear a little bit about your history with the Mad Max franchise, and sort of your feelings on this property as a whole. I don't really have anything to share because, again, showing my ass as the movie podcaster who has seen the fewest movies, this is the only Mad Max movie I have ever seen.
Okay.
I've caught parts of Road Warrior and Thunderdome on TV, but I have never seen those movies in full. This is my only experience with the world of Mad Max.
Okay. My history with Mad Max starts about a week before the release of Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay, yeah.
I watched all of the movies for the first time in the lead up to going to see Fury Road. Going to see Fury Road with an ex-girlfriend who I had a particularly bad breakup with in college.
Yeah.
And this was our second or third time hanging out after starting to talk again. And eventually we ended up moving in together for a few years. This was our second time hanging out, was going to see Mad Max Fury Road. And I watched the entire movie with a smile on my face. And meanwhile, she was sitting next to me, like grabbing my arm and grabbing my leg in terror at just how intense this movie is, and gasping. The part where one of Morton Joe's wives, Splendid, who's the pregnant woman, when she almost slams into that rock, she, like, my friend or my ex-girlfriend sitting next to me, like, gasped and grabbed my leg and dug her nails into my leg, and then when she died, you know, a few seconds later, she did it again.
Yeah.
So I was having the time of my life. My ex-girlfriend was going through the worst day of her life.
I think both of those reactions to this movie, though, are totally valid and exactly what the movie is kind of going for, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it is nonstop, high octane, extremely intense, suspenseful action, right?
But it's not mindless.
No,
and it's
no,
also
it's also by no stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. It's also very well crafted and paced.
Oh yeah.
Which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
To go into my history with the rest of the movies, I like all of them. I've rewatched all of them multiple times. I rewatched them this week leading up to this. They're all good.
Yeah.
They're all a little different. And yet this is clearly the best one. For a long time, it was Road Warrior. Like, everyone was like, oh, Road Warrior's the best one. But now, even the people who like Road Warrior the best, I think are like, but Fury Road, though.
Yeah.
Like, this is just kind of on another level.
Yeah.
So what was it like the first time you saw this?
Yeah. So I saw this movie the year it came out, because everybody was talking about it. It was sort of the biggest movie in the world for a little bit in 2015 when it released. And I was like, I like action movies. I really want to see that. I watched it, and I was blown the fuck away by it, as I think a lot of people were. This movie is, the first time you see it, it's an incredible experience on so many levels. I think there were a couple things for me that left a huge impression. One was, there are lots of movies like this, some that we have covered on this podcast, many that we will probably cover in the future on this podcast. And the type of movie that I'm talking about is a how the fuck did they do this movie,
which you could apply to all of the movies in this franchise, really.
Yeah, right. I've seen some scenes from, like, Road Warrior that I had that same reaction to. So that was a big thing the first time I saw it. Was just, I was in awe of the skill, the craft on display, from everything from the cinematography to the stunts, to the digital effects, all of it. I was just like, how in the world am I seeing what I'm seeing on screen right now? And when I say it's a how the fuck did they do this movie, as opposed to a movie that has a few how the fuck did they do this moments, right? This movie is that from beginning to end.
Yes.
Like, there is pretty much no scene in this movie where I'm like, oh, I totally understand how this was done. I'm like, this is magic to me. And so that was one reaction I had. And another reaction I had is, I don't think at the time, and I've seen more movies, I've become more of an avid movie watcher since 2015 when I saw this for the first time. But at the time, I think it was the first action movie that I had seen where I was like, this movie also is genius on a thematic level. And now I've seen a few more that I would put in that category, but I would still say this is one of the movies I've seen, one of the action movies I've seen that does that the best. So basically, like, my first time watching it, I was like, this is a masterpiece for kind of those two main reasons.
Yeah, thematically, this is the deepest of the franchise, I think. All of the others have similar themes about war and the environment, but they're not really saying it on the level that this is. And I think this has the most developed world building and characters and sense of, like, what this world is really like, in a way that the other films don't have. And I was going to rewatch the bonus features for this this morning, but I ended up just watching the movie again, not because I felt underprepared, but just because I wanted to watch the movie again, because it's that fucking good. To answer the question of how did they do this, and this applies to every movie in the franchise, they just did it.
Right.
Some people got hurt, but nobody died.
Yeah.
And it's a movie made by a crazy person.
Yes.
It like the only like watching this, knowing nothing about if you know nothing about George Miller, the only conclusion that your mind can come to is this was made by a crazy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially considering he didn't just direct this, he also wrote it. And it was a passion project for him. He started working on this in what, like the 90s?
Yeah, this was like 30 years in the making.
Yeah. So it's like, it is an insane genius's passion project that took him multiple decades to actualize. And you see it on screen.
It's also made by the guy who did Happy Feet and Babe Pig in the City.
That's right. George Miller has two modes. He has children's film and this. Which is, man, what a brain that guy has.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's probably time to start talking about the movie.
Let's talk about the fucking movie.
Yeah. So, this, first of all, just very brief on this. I always like when the studio logos are part of the film's aesthetic.
Yeah, I like that.
Instead of the regular Warner Bros. Logo, we have like a rusty and bloody one.
Mhm.
That's pretty neat.
That's fun.
And all that. And we open with Tom Hardy voiceover. What a voice that man has. We will be gushing about Tom Hardy more, I'm sure. This is probably not the moment at the very, very top of our discussion about the movie to hone in on him. But like, the sultry tones of Tom Hardy opening this movie. And he's doing his opening. Well, actually, before that, we do get the dystopian, post-apocalyptic, world-ending news montage.
Yeah.
Which I love. I always like when that
Yeah,
happens.
of course.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. The thing with all of the Mad Max movies is there's a very loose continuity to them. All you really need to know going into them is that the world ended at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Max was a cop, and Max's family died.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to know that story, you watch the first Mad Max.
Mm-hmm.
But the specifics as to how the world ended don't really matter. It's clear that like nuclear weapons were involved. It's some sort of war over resources, and this is now in the distant future, quite a few years after the world has fallen.
Yeah, the world's been ended for a while.
And Max is maybe for the first time in the series truly actually going mad.
He is mad. There are multiple points in this movie when he's like, I'm insane. Which is, it's very fun that this movie sort of centers around, it is a two-hander between him and Furiosa, but one of the focal points of this movie, it's very fun that he's just actually completely out of his mind. So he starts with this opening voiceover and saying a few things that you just said. He used to be a cop. The world has ended, blah, blah, blah. There's like a two-headed radiation lizard, like a little Fallout critter.
Gobbles that thing right up.
It's a very cute little lizard, and it is a little sad that it immediately gets stomped on and eaten, but it also goes really hard as an opening moment of this film.
It's funny watching that little tail wiggle as it goes down its mouth.
Yeah, I also love how before he gets captured and he gets his hair cut and shaved, he does sort of look like one of the Geico cavemen for a little bit. He's got like he's got really long nasty hair that's like starting to form into natural dreads, but is like only like 30% of the way there, and he's got this like big scraggly hideous beard. This is the most like Mel Gibson he looks in the entire movie, by the way. And then so he gets in his car and starts driving because he realizes that there are people coming up on him.
And then cars jump over the camera.
Yes.
And this is the first of insane things that happens in this movie.
Yeah. This movie is shot again with an insane person directing it. So like the camera is places that seem dangerous for a cameraman to be, and the camera is doing things that it seems dangerous for a camera operator to be doing, like a lot of the time. There are points where the camera is inside a moving vehicle and then will go in a single shot go up onto the roof of that vehicle, and the guy holding that camera is just going from the inside to the outside of a moving car. And that happens a shit ton of times. Mm-hmm. Also, anything that can fly at the lens of the camera in this movie will and does.
I think this released in 3D, and there's really only one shot of this movie that seems like, oh, they did that for the 3D, which is the
This-
war rig crashing at the very end.
Right, the guitar and then the steering wheel.
Right. But so it's not really very egregious, but like, yeah, this is something's always happening. The camera's always moving. Shit's always flying at the screen, and you never lose track of what's going on.
There's at least no, yeah, absolutely you don't. The spatial awareness, like the way that Miller and his cinematography crew on here, his camera crew, have control over perspective and spatial awareness. It's perfect. You, like you said, you never lose track of what's going on, even though the action is insanely fast paced in this movie. By the way, a lot of that comes down to the editing, which is immaculate in this movie, and it won an Oscar for best editing, which was well deserved. This is one of the best edited movies I have ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We say goodbye to Max's trademark interceptor here, as he gets captured by the war boys.
We more say see you later to the interceptor because it shows back up.
Yeah, it shows back up. Shows back up in a different form, but it does hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
The interceptor never survives a full movie. He gets it at the end of Mad Max. It is destroyed halfway through Road Warrior. It's completely absent for Thunderdome, and then it gets blowed up and built back together into something different for this movie. So he gets captured and tortured and basically breaks out of his capture.
Yeah, this is where they shave his head.
Yeah.
They shave his beard off. So now he just looks like a snack and a half Tom Hardy. And they also give him a tattoo because their plan is to make him like a blood donor for the warrior class.
So the tattoo says that he's a universal donor.
Yes. And also, I feel like this is one of many bad decisions that this society run by Immortan Joe is making, which is giving all of the people who are blood donors tattoos with the most disgusting, rusty-looking, filthy needle I've ever seen, and wiping it down with a cloth that just looks like it has been drenched in sweat and human shit. I'm like, that is going to be infected immediately, and it seems really bad to have your living IV bag immediately have a blood infection. But I don't think a lot of things in Immortan Joe's cult society are very well thought out. Like the fact that gasoline is a very precious resource. It's very scarce, and they're all using as much of it as possible at all times. Which again, like, it's funny to like laugh about that, but I also do think George Miller is saying that's an environmental statement that he's making,
I think so.
As well. Anyway, yeah, so he's running away.
He's running away. He's breaking out. He's got the muzzle on his face. That great muzzle. Great piece of production design.
Oh yeah. It also won an Oscar for like the production design as well.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And he eventually makes it to like this door that's basically opens up to the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
Of this. The Citadel, which is several rock formations in the desert.
Sorry, before that happens, I do have to call out one of the visuals in this movie that I like the most, which is him being haunted by the specters of the people that he failed to save and protect, and their faces flashing between human faces and skulls.
Yeah, that's fun. Very Raimi.
Yes. That's why I brought it up. It rocks, and it also gives you like an insight into his insane mind. Right, he has cracked. But yeah, so he's like dangling over this cliff. He like jumps, and like they've chained his wrists together, and he catches the chain on this like dangling hook, and like the war boys are all like trying to grab him, and I like that one of them just like fucking falls and is like, this is the first time we get witness me.
Yeah.
Right. And they pull him back in and put this like saran wrap, it looks like, over his face, and like haul him back inside, and then the title card slams shut over the screen, Mad Max, and then Fury Road appears in flames, And what a fucking cold open.
Yeah.
What a fucking cold open for a movie.
I also love the way that they speed up the frames during this this opening, which is something that he does in every Mad Max movie. I think probably back in the 70s and the 80s, it was like just a technique that people probably wouldn't notice as a way to make things seem more intense. But here it seems very like intentionally used, and I love that.
Yeah.
It happens at multiple points in this movie.
Yeah, he deploys it a lot at like the most intense moments of this very intense movie. It's like a way that he uses to ratchet up the tension to like an 11, you know.
Yeah. So after Max gets captured, we're just have a very brief introduction to what this world is, and it's really all that we need. This is a community of disgusting shit people who worship an overlord named Immortan Joe.
Yes, who worship the emperor of the disgusting shit people, the most disgusting and shittiest of them all, Immortan Joe. Yeah, I like him being armored up. Like it's like they're putting his breastplate on, and he's got like all these like disgusting sores and shit, and he puts on his mask that he uses to breathe and all that.
I love all the medals that he has too.
That's stolen valor, by the way.
Yeah.
He didn't earn those.
Yeah, totally. Well, and the he's clearly like fat and overweight and diseased
and old.
Yeah. And the clear armor has like abs and stuff.
It's like Greek breastplate,
yeah,
where it has like the ab muscles defined on it. And it's like it immediately tells you everything you need to know about this guy.
Yeah.
Which is that all of this is a facade. He is projecting this strongman image when actually he is weak, frail, and pathetic. Not unlike some people who might be currently running for president. Yeah. So you also get introduced to like some various sort of casts of society here, basically. And like to your point, this is very efficiently done. And you continue to get more context about all of this throughout the movie, mostly through visuals. This movie shows a bunch and doesn't tell a bunch, which is both very well done and extremely appreciated on my end, because there's nothing that turns me off more to a sci-fi or fantasy world than the part where we stop and explain shit for a really long time using our words. It's like, no, don't tell me, just fucking show me.
Yeah, that would kill this movie.
Yeah, and this movie doesn't do that at all. It's all show and no tell, basically.
I don't understand, because there are some people who criticize this movie, maybe more so when it came out than now, I don't know, but they were like, the story's not very developed or very complex. It's like, do you want a character stopping this movie in its tracks to explain what's going on to you?
Yeah. And I would argue, like, while that criticism of the plot being relatively simplistic, this movie is one big chase.
Yeah.
It is one big chase with one objective the whole time, right? And each side has one objective. One side wants the wives back. The other side wants a safe place to live. And that's it, right? In terms of plot, I would say what it lacks in complexity from a plot perspective, from like a story beat perspective, it more than makes up for in thematic depth, which is like a thing I already mentioned. This movie is less interested about what is happening and is more interested in what it means. And I think that that's a strong choice to make the story so simple, because then you have more wiggle room to explore both the world building and also the themes that we're exploring. By keeping the story simple, you give your audience a really easy entry point to explore those other more complex things, because the story doesn't take a lot of thought to put together.
And that's something that all of these movies do. And when they try to get a little bit more complex, like Thunderdome, it doesn't quite go over as well, which makes me interested in how the Furiosa movie's gonna play for me. But you're absolutely right. I think this is such efficient storytelling that everything this movie is giving you is just what you need. You don't need anything more. You don't need to understand anything more about these characters, because what's presented on screen is enough to stimulate your brain and get you thinking and get you coming up with your own fun ideas about who these people are and what this world is like.
Yes, and one of the ways that this movie does that is when we are introduced to the War Boys. They are immediately recognizable to me as a cisgender heterosexual male. I love what this movie is saying about masculinity. You, as a person who know me and have talked to me a lot about the themes that I find interesting in art, know that critiques of masculinity are one of the things that I really severely fuck with in media. And immediately the War Boys doing their like macho chest pounding, chanting, "Comma crazy War Boys," right?
Mm-hmm.
Their whole aesthetic, I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. Fucking give this to me more. And it continues to. We also meet Furiosa here, who is going. So basically, the situation, the setup here, is that Immortan Joe is sending out like a convoy with supplies to allies in Gastown and the Bullet Farm. He's sending them produce and water, and in exchange, they're trading bullets and gasoline to him. And the person who is in command of this operation is Imperator Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron,
Who is excellent in this movie.
She's, I mean, what can you even say about
There's
this?
a reason that they did a spin-off movie focused on this character.
Yes. And like, what can you even say about this performance other than like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, like this is amazing. This is an amazing performance from an incredibly talented actress. And trying to elaborate further is meaningless because you just have to see it to believe it, you know? Anyway, so like they go out on the war rig.
Yeah.
And they get a little way down the road, and Furiosa takes a left turn.
She dares to turn left into enemy territory. There's also a moment somewhere in here where we understand that Immortan Joe has control over the water here.
Oh yeah,
and there's the disgusting shit people are all gathered below with like cups,
yes,
and buckets and stuff, and he has these three big pumps that he pumps water up from the earth
that he controls with two enormous chrome handles.
Yeah.
And I like that there's like an off setting, a half setting, and a full setting. I don't think half ever gets used.
They're I think they're like supposed to be throttles from like ships.
Yeah.
And he showers them in water and then immediately shuts it off and
Yeah.
says, "Do not, my friends, become addicted to water."
But you will resent its absence.
Yeah. So you know exactly how this society operates.
Yes, and living in the American Southwest, I'm like, we're almost there, dog.
Yeah.
We're 15 years away from our leaders in southwestern American states telling us not to become addicted to water because we will resent its absence. And so yeah, he is ruling this cult community, and it is a cult. Like there's a big religious aspect to him. They worship him as a god.
They worship him as a god.
Mhm.
The War Boys worship engines and chrome and vehicles.
One of my favorites. So this movie is full of, and again, we're not going to call it out every single time because we'd be here all day. This movie is full of tiny little details that just enrich this world so much. And one of them is the War Boys. They do a hand salute that is 4 fingers interlocked with the 4 fingers on the other hand, and they chant V8, V8. So they're making their hands into the shape of a V8 engine, and it's just like little shit like that is just so well done and so well deployed in this movie.
And when they the War Boys get ready to go out and chase Furiosa, which they do here, they have an altar of steering wheels, and everyone has their own steering wheel, and taking that steering wheel from the altar is like a ritual.
Yes, it's a religious act.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So here we meet Nux, played brilliantly by Nicholas Hoult.
Oh yeah.
This is the best I've ever seen Nicholas Hoult.
Agreed. I think I've never disliked him in anything
No,
I've
I
seen
don't
him
think
in,
so.
but this is my favorite Nicholas Hoult performance. He's also like sort of unrecognizable here. Part of it is the shaved head, but he really like transforms in this role.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, he's on the same He's on the same wavelength that this movie needs him to be on.
Yes. I love the War Boys visual aesthetic. You get it a lot with Nux because he's the one that you see the most. I love the scarification on his lips that make his mouth look like a skull mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of the like scarification tattoos. They don't give the War Boys ink tattoos. It's like their flesh has been carved into tattoo patterns. That's all great. They're also covered in this white powder, which Immortan Joe is also covered in. And we see with Immortan Joe, it seems to have some kind of like medical purpose. It's maybe like talcum powder or something to keep his open sores dry. But they've just kind of replicated his appearance. All of the whole visual aesthetic of all the War Boys, but Nux in particular, because the focus is kind of on him, is so good.
Yeah. He also is covered in like tumors. A lot of them are covered in sort of tumorous lumps.
I love that his tumors have little smiley faces
and they have names. There's mates.
Yeah.
So they're all sick, or some of them are sick, and the idea is that Nux is too sick to drive.
Mm-hmm.
His buddy Slit, who I also love in this movie, he has like a Chelsea smile. The guy playing him is putting his whole dick and balls into this thing.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, the Chauncey smile that you mentioned is stapled shut, and when he talks, it like affects his ability to enunciate his words, which is great. Yeah, Slit is great.
Slit's the fucking man. And Nux is sick. Nux is too sick to drive, but Nux wants to die historic on a Fury Road,
brother,
and chase down Furiosa. So the idea is they're going to hook up Max to the front of their car, and run an IV tubing from Max to Nux, so he can be filled with blood and be a little bit, I guess, more awake when he's driving or something.
Yeah. He's not gonna pass out while he's driving because he's got the drip of clean universal donor blood that has not yet succumbed to a blood infection from that tattoo they gave him.
It's this world's equivalent of taking a 5-hour energy on a long distance road trip, I guess.
So yeah, they go out. Joe sends all of his War Boys out after Furiosa. Also here, Joe figures out what happened. He goes into his sort of palace that's in the Citadel. The design of the Citadel, by the way, there's these big plateaus, like these big mesas, that are all grassy on top, and it's just this wonderful pop of green in this really orange and brown landscape. I'm not going to call it out every time again, but the command of color in this movie is unparalleled.
Yeah.
It's really concise command of color is a thing that I love to see in movies. I love when the color is telling you things about the world and about the story, and about the themes of the movie. And the pops of green on those rock mesas totally does that. But anyway, he goes into his palace in the Citadel where his wives are kept, and sees that they are not there. And there's some writings on the floor and walls. Our babies will not be warlords who killed the world, and we are not things are the ones that we see. And here we meet Miss Giddy, who Joe is like, where are my wives? And Miss Giddy's like, oh, they're gone.
Where is she taking them?
Yeah.
Shout out to Miss Kitty. Also, really could have pulled the trigger on that shotgun just a few seconds earlier.
She really should have shot first and lectured him about human rights later. Because that's what she's doing. She's basically like, you cannot own a human being. And it's like, I agree with everything you're saying. Maybe say it to him while he's dying on the floor because you shot him with a shotgun. Maybe you don't need to yell that at him while he's marching toward you. But he like disarms her, and she does not unfortunately end his life here.
We got to talk about the Giga Horse. Do you know what the Giga Horse is?
I don't know names of specific vehicles in this movie.
It's a Morton Joe's monster truck that's two Cadillac Coupe de Ville smashed together.
Yeah.
This is the coolest vehicle ever.
Yeah.
I just wanted to call it out. I mean, there's a billion fucking cool cars in this movie.
Yeah.
But
and cool motorcycles and cool,
it's so rad. So he kidnaps Miss Giddy, and him and his his cronies the organic mechanic, played by Angus Sampson, Rictus Erectus,
Yeah.
his son. They get in the Giga Horse and they go off with the War Boys, chasing after Furiosa.
Yeah, so Immortan Joe has two sons, by the way. There's Rictus Erectus, and then what's the name of the other one?
I'm not sure.
Oh gosh. Okay. But yeah, so he's got two sons. Rictus is one of them, and then there's his other son who is like looking through the telescope. And I love this actor who portrays this role has osteogenesis imperfecta, which is like a physical developmental disorder. He's great in this movie. He gives a great performance. And I love his delivery of they ain't going to Gas Town, because he's like watching the convoy turn off course. And I also love when he's talking to Rictus and he's like, Rictus, go see what's bothering Dad. And he like shoves Rictus's head to the side in this really like dismissive gesture. I just love the thing that there's like this like physically disabled son that Immortan Joe has, who's like clearly like a genius, and then there's Rictus, who is very, very stupid.
Yeah.
And is like a hulking monster.
Yeah, and that's kind of a carryover from Thunderdome, where there are two characters that are kind of a unit
Yeah.
that are like that. Rictus, we also have to mention, seems to need the use of oxygen,
Yes.
which will come back later when Max whacks him in the face with one of his own oxygen tanks.
Yeah, he's got like oxygen tanks strapped to his back, and he has like this breathing apparatus on his face, like tubes going into his nose.
I thought it was very funny.
Yeah.
So we're chasing after Furiosa.
Yes. So the convoy's after. I love this guy who's on the convoy who's on the war rig with Furiosa, who's like, "Hey boss, why'd we turn left?" And she's like, "Don't worry about it. It's like new orders." And he like passes it down the line. I love that he just keeps popping up in this window and is like, "Oi, what the fuck's going on, mate?"
Yeah, it takes him a while to realize what's going on.
He really maybe is not thinking about this as thoroughly as he should be, because I feel like there are many signs that he does not pick up on. Like so they see that the whole war party that Immortan Joe has sent out are after them, and he's like, "Oh, like reinforcement, should we turn around and join them?" And she's like, "No, we got this." And they're also they're sending up these flares to signal. And this made me realize, between this and the Harkonnen fireworks in Dune Part 2, I think I just like sci-fi fireworks a lot, because these flares were making me really excited.
Well, it's another fun pop of color in this.
Yeah.
Because this is the orange and blue movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the flares is like red.
Some of them are yellow.
And they're signaling, Gastown and the Bullet Farm. It's just a really nice, and the music cuts out too, which we'll talk about the music. It's a great moment, and a great wide shot of all of these crazy, insane vehicles. One of which is just a bunch of amps and drums and a guy playing a flamethrower guitar.
The Doof Warrior, David.
Yes, the Doof Warrior.
To be a guy in a dystopian apocalypse whose entire job is riffs. This man, not just his entire job, his entire life seems to be riffs. If he is not playing that guitar, he's sleeping in a hammock. That seems to be his entire existence. And I'm like, I think this guy might be the happiest guy in the apocalypse.
Oh, he's having a time of his life.
He's just fucking shredding. I love the moment where it's later when they like reach the swamp. I love that he plays music that fits the tone of what's happening. Like they get they're approaching the swamp and like things are getting slowed down and stuck, and he like goes into this kind of chugging doom riff where he's been doing like more thrashy stuff earlier. And I'm like, I just love that he's like, and now it's the doom metal part of the movie. We're
dramatically soundtracking the part of the movie where the convoy slows down. And we've encountered a conflict in the story.
It's great. So Furiosa and the war rig are driving like away from the war party. The war boys who are with Furiosa haven't quite caught on to what's happening yet, and they run into some like some scavengers, basically.
Yeah,
some like
they're
marauders.
they're called the buzzards.
Yeah.
They speak Russian, which was funny.
Just these Russians who are in Australia, who happen to be in Australia during the apocalypse,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Well, guess this is our life now."
And they have spiked cars, and the fucking shit gets kicked off, man. There's this spike trap that one of the car directly in front of the war rig runs into, and it flips multiple times. And holy shit. holy shit.
I've seen behind the scenes about that effect specifically, and they just did that.
Yeah. You watch the behind the scenes footage of Fury Road. It's just Fury Road. And there's stuff that's assisted with CGI, explosions,
we'll talk about
and
the
stuff like
sandstorm
that.
later. That's a big CGI kind of heavy part of this movie. But like, I'm at a loss for words about the effect of the car spinning over the spike pit.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, an insane person made this movie.
Yeah.
This is an insane person's ideas appearing in 4K Ultra HD on my TV screen right in front of my eyes. It's like, what the fuck? So yeah, the buzzards are kind of all on the tail of the war rig, and the war party, Morton Joe's war party, catches up, and basically their plan is like, let's kill all of these buzzards first, and then we'll capture Furiosa and bring the wives back.
Yeah.
And at this point, one of the wives, I think, has come out from under the war rig and is like, we can't breathe down there, and Furiosa's like, deal with it, there's people fucking trying to kill us.
Now is not the time.
There are a few moments with Immortan Joe's wives, and I think the movie does a good job of balancing this, where it's like, these are highly capable women in a lot of moments of this movie, and also they have lived the most pampered and least dangerous existence that anyone in this dystopia is capable of. They've of course experienced an insane amount of trauma, right? Not to say that their lives were good or easy, however, like actual battle, right? They're the ones in this world who have experienced that the least. And so I like that this movie kind of balances. It's like, sometimes the wives are like really, really helpful and capable and empower Furiosa and Max by their presence. And then sometimes they are a little bit of a burden as well, especially for Furiosa, which, like, I appreciate that kind of push and pull, where she's like, I love these girls, I want to save these girls, and also, can you get the fuck out of the way?
They all have silly names that the movie doesn't necessarily tell you, and that I don't necessarily remember.
Except for Angharad, which they say 50 times
yeah,
in this
movie. Yeah, they say
movie.
that a lot. I also don't know the names of all these actresses, other than, like, Zoe Kravitz is here in the mix.
And Zoe Kravitz is really good in this movie.
Yeah, she's good.
She's great.
All the wives are good.
Yes.
I just wanted to get that out of the way, because there's probably going to be a lot of times where we just say one of the wives.
I think I did a pretty good job of remembering which wife is which and knowing their names.
Okay.
So I think I might be able to help us out on that.
Okay.
And the wife that came up to say they couldn't breathe, I believe, is either Angharad or the Dag. I don't remember which one, but
one of the two blonde ones.
Yes, those are the two blonde ones.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the war party catches up. They start killing the buzzards. This is the first of many incredible action sequences in this movie, and like, there have already been action sequence, like the chase with Max was an action sequence, but this is really where we go into high gear.
Yes,
pun intended.
I love the buzzards have this construction vehicle.
Yeah,
this insane construction vehicle with like buzzsaw attachments.
Yes,
and it's got like a digger on the back of it.
Yes,
and it's kind of like the main boss.
Yeah,
of the boss fight of the buzzard attack.
Yes. It's incredible, and I love that the buzzsaw blades get stuck in the tanker that they're hauling, and throughout the movie they continue to be there every time you see the tanker. I'm just like, I love that happened in this early scene, and we're constantly being reminded it for the rest of the movie. It's great.
Yeah. And there's also these weapons that they use throughout this movie that are called thunderpoons, and they're awesome. It's an explosive on the end of a spear. And the war boys use them all the time. And there's an awesome moment where one of the war boys gets shot through like the collarbone and the side of his face with
fucking face.
these crossbow bolts.
And they're long as shit, too.
Yeah, yeah.
These things are like 2 feet long.
Yeah.
That are sticking out of this guy. And one of them, is just going directly through his cheek and out the back of his head. Oh, God.
And he slumps over, and everyone thinks he's dead, and then he gets back up.
And the war boys start just amping him up and being like, do it, fucking do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he shouts, "Witness me!" and sprays himself with the spray paint drug thing. I think it might just be spray paint.
I think it's just spray paint.
I think they're just huffing paint.
Exactly. I think that the purpose of this is it's like a religious.
Yeah.
This is basically they are about to martyr themselves for Immortan Joe, and so this spray paint thing is sort of like a symbol, a religious symbol of like I am about to die a religious suicide death. And also, it gets them high because it's spray paint. And they spray paint their mouth and teeth chrome, and it is amazing. And yeah, and then this guy fucking jumps off of this vehicle onto one of the Buzzard's cars with these 2 explosive lances, these 2 explosive spears, and blows it the fuck up. And all of the war boys are like, "Witness!
Witness!"
It's so good.
And they start doing the V8 hand signal and bowing and shit. It's the coolest thing that's ever been in the movie.
Yes.
Been in the movie, and we're going to say that probably 50 more times.
Yes. I also like, I think it's a little before this, but it doesn't matter. I also like that as they're doing this buzzard attack, probably my favorite war boy moment of this entire movie happens, which is one of the war boys is like shooting at buzzards or whatever, and then he turns around facing the camera directly and just goes, "War!" Which I was like, again, my caveman brain, my lizard brain is just like, hell yeah, I love action movie.
Oh yeah, this is a big lizard brain movie.
But also at the same time, the war boy turning around and screaming war at the camera, I'm also like, that is such an incisive and genius piece of commentary about the themes that this movie is exploring.
Yeah.
About how toxic masculinity is inherently violent, right? And about how you get caught up in the kind of feedback loop of man strong, man fight other man, strongest man is best man, right? And it's like, to be able to make me think of all of that by just having a bald guy covered in white powder yell war at a camera is incredible movie making.
and masculinity's cult-like, and
Yes.
whether it's coming from the president of the United States,
Yeah.
or a dictator,
Mhm.
or a police officer, or some dickhead on the internet that wants to try to sell you cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
That's the function of Immortan Joe. That's what
Yes.
and also Immortan Joe, the line "Who killed the world?"
Yeah.
Men like Immortan Joe.
Yes. Yes. That's the answer to the question.
Yeah.
That the movie never spoon feeds you.
Mhm.
It asks the question and expects you to understand the answer based on the other things it's telling you.
Yeah.
And yeah, masculinity is a death cult. It is I shouldn't say masculinity in general, specifically toxic masculinity, because there is a way to be non-toxically masculine. And I think this movie does a good job of showing that as well, because Nux and Max are characters in this movie that show you, and even to Furiosa to some extent, because she is performing masculinity at a lot of points in this movie, despite the fact that she is a woman. And so I think this movie is telling you, like, there is a way to be non-toxically masculine. However, toxic masculinity is a death cult, and it is a death cult that doesn't only hurt the people who perform masculinity in that way. It hurts everybody,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that's what this movie is about.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Immortan Joe, we haven't said his name yet, played by Hugh Keays-Byrne,
Yeah.
who also played the main villain in the original Mad Max film, does an incredible job with his performance. He's so expressive. He has to act under this mask,
Mhm.
and his eyes do all of the acting for him.
Yep.
But Immortan Joe is that charismatic leader who also is hoarding resources, who is intentionally creating a wealth gap.
Yes.
And then when you look at the People Eater who runs Gastown and the Bullet Farmer, who we'll talk about when we get to them.
Oh, yeah.
The People Eater is clearly like a businessman, an accountant, a banker.
Mm-hmm.
So he represents the rich. And then the Bullet Farmer obviously has all access to all these weapons.
He's the military
He's the military industrial complex.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Immortan Joe, crucially, the one thing that you didn't mention is he is also a sexual predator.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right? So we're hitting all of the things that toxic masculinity has wrought in the world, right? It's like war is a product of it. Sexual violence is a product of it. Greed is to some extent a product of it, right? And it's like all from this root evil of thinking that you must be the biggest and the strongest and the best to have any value, which is really what toxic masculinity is trying to tell you, right? If you're not better than other people, then you have no value whatsoever, is basically the narrative.
And the impression that we get is that Immortan Joe, at least me, my impression of Immortan Joe, is he's just some nobody dickhead.
Yep.
Who saw an opportunity to take power.
Yeah.
In the apocalypse.
Yep, totally. That's exactly my read on him too.
Yeah.
It's like this guy, there's nothing special about this guy. He's just the guy who was in the right place at the right time to get some people under his thumb, and he just grabbed that power and hung onto it through violence, you know. Anyway, so the buzzard attack ends, like they kill all the buzzards. And then the war boys are gonna try and take the wives back now that the buzzards are out of the way.
Yeah. And we ride into a sandstorm.
Yes, and before we ride into the sandstorm, the guy who keeps popping in the window to talk to Furiosa is finally like, "Hey, now that the buzzards are gone, why aren't we stopping?" And she's like, "Don't fucking worry about it." And he's like, "What the fuck did you do?" And start trying to strangle her. And I'm like, it took you this long?
Well, and Furiosa has several weapons stashed in the cab of this thing.
Yeah.
She could have just killed this guy. She probably should have just killed this guy before he tried to like strangle her or whatever he does.
It's true. I think she was like trying to maintain the illusion for as long as possible because she has a bunch of war boys on her rig. And she's like, as soon as I shoot this guy in the head, I'm going to have to kill all those guys. So like, let's just see if we can get to the sandstorm first, and maybe this problem will solve itself, because they'll all just blow off the truck.
We should mention at this point, because we haven't said his name in a while, and that's because Max has been strapped onto a car this whole time with a muzzle on his face.
Yeah.
That's being driven by Nux and slits in the back, like throwing the Thunderpoons and attacking and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so Max has just been hanging out on the front of the car. Although when they're heading into the sandstorm, they do move him from the front of the car. Slick comes in and moves him to the back, because if he was on the front of that car when they went into that sandstorm, there goes your blood bag. He would be shredded. So they're getting into the back so that he's protected from the sand. And while this is happening, Max sees an opportunity and starts fighting Slit.
And Slit falls off the back of the car.
Yeah.
And I love the sandstorm's so good. The sandstorm visually is so good. It's clearly CGI.
Yes.
But it's also the music here, Junkie XL's score. Here it's very sweeping and orchestral and grand.
Yeah.
And you feel like the terrible and awful majesty of this storm.
Yeah.
And I love the shot where a car just gets lifted off the ground.
Yeah.
And we see the war boys like fly off of it like it's in a tornado.
Yeah.
And it just explodes and is floating in the air for a while.
Yes.
And it hits a point when the music is swelling.
And it turns into like a biblical pillar of fire.
Yes.
And there's like lightning in the background. One of the war boys who is on that car bounces off the ground and flies at the camera. It's maximalist and it is excessive. And also it is very artistically and beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a perfect marriage of spectacle and artistry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every time there's a lightning flash, the color of the film turns to black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such a great choice.
Yeah.
I also should mention that my second viewing of this film, which happened this morning because I just wanted to watch it again, was of the so-called black and chrome edition, which is this movie in black and white. And I have to say, it's even better in black and white.
I need to watch the black and chrome edition. I haven't before. But yeah, I mean, it's just this sandstorm sequence. I will say about the CGI in this movie, I don't think it is always perfect.
No.
But I think it is always at least very good. I don't think there is any CGI moment in this movie that I would say is less than very good.
And every time that there's a CGI moment that calls attention to itself, like the sandstorm or
The steering wheel flying at
the steering wheel
camera
flying
later.
at the camera, or even just before that when like Rictus like rips the engine off of the war rig. There is a subtle use of CGI that you don't even notice, like Furiosa's metal arm.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect CGI.
If you told me it was practical, I would believe you. This isn't, because we've sometimes talked a little bit of shit about CGI effects versus practical effects, as I think people are often want to do.
Yeah.
I think this is an important point for this podcast for us to acknowledge. CGI, we're not against CGI. CGI is not bad.
This is the template for how to use CGI effectively.
Yes. And even in moments that are CGI heavy, this sandstorm is CGI heavy. A lot of the visuals that you're seeing in this sequence were not practically done, or were partially practically done, right? But the majority of what you're seeing on screen in a lot of moments of this sandstorm sequence is CGI. And I would say, correct choice in the movie, and it looks amazing. So, like, I just want to acknowledge I'm not an anti-CGI person, because when you do it like this, you fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's great CGI in this movie, and they also made, 80 some odd real cars that they had real stunt drivers drive in.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you should make a movie like this.
Completely agree.
So yeah, Nux decides we're all going to hell tonight. And floods the car with gasoline and sprays his face with that spray paint.
Yeah, and this is where we get all of his most iconic lines. Riding to Valhalla.
What a day! What a lovely day! Which he says after he watches his friends explode.
That's
in the other
right
car.
after the pillar of fire moment. Yeah, and he's like, and I love him watching it like he's a rubbernecker looking at an accident on a highway, right? Where he's just looking at it like, oh fuck yeah, I want that to be me.
Like he's James Spader in Crash.
Oh man, the
Crash Fury Road.
The Crash crew, the characters in Crash would fucking love this movie. This would be like the kink.com dungeon to those guys. They'd be like, oh, this is some real freaky shit. Hell yeah. Especially because they practically crash so many of those cars. Yeah. I can just see all of those Crash characters just watching the behind the scenes like making of footage of Mad Max Fury Road and like furiously jerking off. Just being like, yeah. Oh, that stuntman got hurt. Yeah. James Spader in that movie. James Spader and Holly Hunter in that movie. He's just like, babe, put on the tape. It's just making of Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the what happens in the sandstorm is basically all of Joe's crew sort of gets like waylaid somewhat by this storm, and Nux is the one that's really keeping up with the war rig, and he decides we're all going to hell tonight. He's gonna suicide bomb the war rig, and before he's able to do it, he's got the flare with the flooded cab full of gasoline, and Max has managed to climb, because he obviously kicked the lid off earlier. He manages to climb up to the roof of the vehicle, and there's like a sunroof that he's able to like get through, or I think the roof just blows off the car actually. Something
like that.
He's able to reach down and grab the flare from Nux so that the car doesn't just go up in a ball of flames, and then the car crashes.
They should not survive this crash.
Yes. I love this movie, and it is a perfect movie. However, it is insane that not only do Nux and Max survive this crash, which, like, okay, maybe I can buy that. Sure, the earth was sand below them, so it's a little softer of an impact when they hit the ground or whatever. The fact that neither of them have even a broken bone or a missing limb. They both have all their fingers and toes. I'm like, that is horse shit. Absolutely not. Because you see this crash and it is like devastating. This car fucking flips end over end. They're smacking into the ground and bouncing it. Their arms are chained together. One or both of their arms should just be fully dislocated.
This is definitely not the most unrealistic crash that I've seen people survive in an action movie. I'm thinking of like in Mission Impossible 5, there's a crash that Tom Cruise and Simon Pegg get into that would kill you in a Grand Theft Auto game, let alone real life.
Yeah.
And then in the very beginning of it's not a car crash, but it's a train, so it's car adjacent. It's car on rail. Mads Mikkelsen's character in the prologue of Indiana Jones 5, he hits a sign or something that's at the end of on the edge of a railroad track, so like a sign or some lights or something.
Yeah.
Like a pipe knocks him in the fucking head and he flies off that thing, and yet he comes back as the villain in the rest of the movie. And I'm like, I think that dude's dead.
That's nonsense.
I think that dude's fucking so dead. Then the most important shot in this movie happens. The most important shot, not the best shot, not the coolest shot. That's obviously the wide shot of the war rig, or not the war rig, the war party, and the Doof Warrior playing his guitar. That's obviously the best shot that's ever been in the movie. The most important shot in this movie is Max rising up from the sand.
Yeah, talk to me about this shot. Tell me why it's the most important shot of the movie.
Because this shot perfectly sets up the pacing of this movie and why I think this movie is so immaculately crafted. And it is not just 2 hours of mindless action, because it is all one big chase, but the movie finds peaks and valleys in the action and in the chase, and it knows when to ramp up the intensity, when to dial things back, when to change things. And this is the big exhale.
Yep.
After this first act.
Yep.
And it lasts just long enough as Max rises out of the sand. It's a good 30 seconds before we're right back into action, but we're into a different type of action.
Yeah. It is. It's it's almost like in a symphony, right? You have a movement and then you have an interlude.
Yes.
It's that. Yeah.
Yes. I think of this movie in musical terms in a lot of ways. It's very lyrical. It feels, because we're not dealing with a lot of dialogue, or the dialogue is not important. The feeling and the movement of this as a piece of art feels like music to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, classical music is the metaphor we just used. This movie is metal as fuck. And also I think, crucially, metal, which I think is a good comparison point for this movie. It's somewhat adopting heavy metal aesthetics, right? Immortan Joe's Flaming Skull belt buckle is very heavy metal. All of the insane post-apocalyptic vehicles would be at home on metal albums, right? I think it's borrowing the aesthetic of that genre of music. I also think that metal's a good comparison point for the pacing of this movie and the tone of this movie to some extent, because metal as an extreme music genre has a tendency to be abrasive and intense, and what separates good metal music from bad metal music a lot of the time is the musician's ability to create dynamics within a genre that is abrasive and intense. If it's only abrasive and intense, a lot of the time, that's bad metal.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you need the moments where we ease up, where we take our foot off the gas for a little bit, so that when the next abrasive and intense moment hits, it hits harder and you appreciate it more than if you're just being hit with a wall of sound, or in the movie's case, the most insane, incredible visuals that you've ever seen nonstop, right? We have to stop. And this movie does it at all the right moments.
Yeah, because stuff like that's fun for about 2 minutes, and then it becomes boring and stale and
why,
repetitive.
That's why grindcore albums are only 18 minutes long. Because if they were longer than that, it would be unlistenable.
Yeah, so this is mostly just a conflict between Max and Nux and Furiosa. Max discovers that Nux has been knocked out. He's still chained up to him.
Yeah.
So he tries to blow Nux's hand off with a shotgun that is, logged with sand, so it misfires.
Yep.
And I like that. he's somehow they're chained through the door of the car. So he just has nuts slung over his shoulder and is carrying the
Carrying a
door
car door.
along with him.
Yes, and he sees something on the horizon, so he's walking toward that, and it's the war rig, which has stopped. So he comes up on Furiosa and the wives, who are now taking a little bath. They're getting clean. They're drinking some water. And he shows up, and I love that because, you know, the five wives are part of the point of why Joe wanted these women so bad is that they are like non-irradiated, very beautiful women, and they all look like supermodels. They're all...
Because they all are.
They're all gorgeous,
Yeah.
yes. And I love that Max's reaction to them. The movie's visual language is so clear that he's like, "Oh, ladies, water," right? He like kind of glances past them, and he's like, "Oh, the fuck, they have water." And it's in his mind, it's like basically he's scanning for threats, and he's like, "Those five aren't a threat. I have to watch out for that lady. I really want that water." And it's like totally not a thing where he's like, I'm being lascivious right now. It's like, no, the only thing he cares about is that hose. So then he drops Nux. And he has carried the shotgun with him that he knows is useless, right? He knows that the shells won't fire, but he's using it to threaten them.
Mm-hmm.
So he drops Nux, he gets all their attention, and he's basically like, give me the hose.
He says, water.
Yes.
Water.
Tom Hardy, this performance, he does, like, it's not a mostly nonverbal performance, I would say. He does talk a bit in this movie, not a lot. He's not a chatty guy.
Yeah.
But he does have more lines of dialogue than I remembered from the last time I saw this movie, which was a few years ago. It had been a while since I went back to this one. And so I remembered him as being mostly silent. It's like, no, he's saying stuff, but mostly it's like one word at a time. And also, I would say 60% of this performance is grunts.
Yeah. Max is not a loquacious gentleman.
No.
And that is true for all incarnations of Max.
Yeah.
And in this movie, he really isn't speaking in complete sentences until about halfway through this thing.
Yeah, except for the opening narration.
Except for the opening narration.
Where he does a Shakespearean monologue.
But because I think he's basically feral.
Yes.
For the first half of this movie.
Yeah.
And of course he has that fucking mask on. He's chained up for this first action sequence, this first chase sequence. So he doesn't have a lot to do other than just like grunt and scream, and in this case grumble, water. And I think Hardy's awesome in this.
Yeah. Should we just talk about him now?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I will say, he was, I guess, hard to work with. He and Charlize Theron clashed a lot on set. And he publicly had to say, after the movie came out, he had to publicly apologize to George Miller and said, like, at a Comic-Con or something like that, or at a screening, where he was like, I didn't see your vision while we were making this.
Yeah.
But I think he still does a great job in this role.
Yes, that is the sign of a consummate professional, which is totally the vibe I get from Tom Hardy, where it's like, even if he doesn't really see the vision, even if he's not really totally invested in the project, he's a consummate professional and he will do his best work regardless of how he gels with a filmmaker or a project. That's just that I'm basing that off of nothing but my own impression of a man that I do not know. Right. But it's like, first of all, Tom Hardy is one of my favorite actors of his type. I wouldn't necessarily say he's one of my favorite actors, although maybe, depending on the day, if you ask me, I might put him up there. But of his type, which I see as sort of like action guy who has a lot of emotional depth all of the time, right? Because I think a lot of the stuff I've seen him in is action stuff, but he has a lot of there's a lot of depth and sincerity to him that separates him from being like a guy like a Statham who is only action guy and that's his only lane, right? The complexity that he's capable of and that he kind of puts into everything he does, regardless of what it is, I think sort of puts him in a different category, and he's one of my favorite of those kind of guys.
Yeah.
I love him. I've loved him in everything I've seen him in.
Yeah. He's very versatile, and can play dramatic, more nuanced and thought out role just as well as he can be an action guy.
Yeah, and yeah, I should say I think of him as an action guy because he's a big burly man, right? He's a big muscular dude, but he appears in non-action stuff as much as he appears in action stuff. I just think of him as kind of like a hunk, which in this movie, once he gets that mask off, by the way, like I said earlier, he is a snack and a half. He looks incredible in this movie.
During this moment, while Tom Hardy is deep-throating this fire hose to the face because he's thirsty, Furiosa tackles him, and they start fighting. He has bolt cutters. Furiosa starts wailing on him with these bolt cutters, and he's using the door as a shield. Which is awesome.
So, the bolt cutters come in because after the hose, he was going to try and get him to cut the chain off that's chaining him to Nux, but he was tackled before they could finish the job. I love this fight so much.
Yeah,
this is a movie packed wall to wall with some of the most incredible action I have ever seen in a movie. This fight is maybe my favorite action sequence of this movie. Just this fight between Furiosa and Max, and the wives kind of helping Furiosa, and Nux sort of, once he regains consciousness, helping Max. It is such a creative fight sequence because there's so many elements here, right? There's the weapons, there's the bolt cutters and the car door. There's the shotgun that we know as the audience isn't actually capable of firing. There's the additional element of Max being changed to Nux. There's so many variables in this fight that force it to be so creative and so inventive, and it is immaculately done. It's excellent fight choreography, and man, I just like.
Yeah, I love it too. I love the Glock that Furiosa has stashed like along the side of the tanker of the war rig.
There's like a ceramic Immortan Joe skull sigil that if you smash, there's just a Glock inside. It's so good.
And they wrestle for the Glock a little bit, and then finally Tom Hardy gets on top of Charlize and loads the Glock and fires it off next to her ear, which is that's such a dick move.
Well, she did it to him a second ago because she got the Glock or they were wrestling for it, and she shoots and the bullet ricochets off the metal mask that he has on, and then you get the ear ringing sound that he's hearing, like it just pops through in the sound mix, and so I think that's a little bit of revenge for that. Like, oh, you shot right next to my ear, I'll shoot right next to your ear. I also love the way the Glock gets loaded. This is just like such a little beautiful visual moment that it's like
Nux like.
Yes.
Like sort of they're on the ground. Nux slides it over and Hardy just slams the Glock.
Nux like has it in his hand and is like, "Here you go." And he just like, yeah. And because Nux grabbed it when it got ejected earlier, it's just like every little detail like that in this fight sequence it's like this is 8-dimensional chess fight choreo. It is like everything that happens, everything the camera shows you has consequences further in the fight sequence. And it's just like, oh, it's so good. It almost makes me mad how good it is.
And it times that by 10 for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
There is nary a Chekhov's gun in this movie that does not get fired.
Yes. By the way, we've already seen one of them, which is the gear shift with a knife in it.
Yeah.
I believe that's coming back. Anyway, so Max gets the best of Furiosa here. He has fired a few shots next to her head and then has it against her forehead. But then the crew is the Immortan Joe's war crew is coming up. Like we can see them on the horizon. So, we know that they're on their way. And Max is basically like, well, I'm not going to kill this lady. I'm just going to steal the truck.
He doesn't get very far because, as Furiosa says, it has a certain kill switch sequence that she knows in order to get the car started or get the truck started. So Tom Hardy's initially very hesitant to let anyone else on. Who's like, okay, you can come on.
Here, by the way, he has managed to get unchained from Nux. After he subdues Furiosa, he does he does get the chain cut.
He still has the mask on.
Yeah, he's got the mask on, but he's separated from Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah. And I like when he's like, you can get in. And she's like, they're not, I'm not going without them. And he's like, all right, so we'll wait here.
Yeah.
we'll wait for Morton Joe. And then she's like, well, you're trusting a very dangerous, unforgiving man.
Yeah.
And I love the thing that and she's trying to convince him to let her in. I love the thing that finally tips him off is like, she's like, you want that thing off your face? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Come on in.
And the way she follows through on that promise is to just give him a file to file through the metal. And I love that this is then a thing for like the next several minutes of this movie. Is it's like, in addition to all of the action shit that's happening, he's also taking any spare second that he can to continue filing so that he can get it off his fucking head.
Now we're one big happy family.
Yeah.
All of the women are in the back.
Yeah, Nux has been knocked unconscious after he got unchained from Max. So they leave him behind and start driving off, but then he runs after the war rig and jumps back on. So unbeknownst to them, Nux has hitched a ride.
Yeah. And Max is finding all the hidden guns and still very guarded and, is very unsure of himself and grunting at people and pointing.
I love all that shit so much when he's finding all the weapons.
I love it.
It's such a good performance moment from Hardy, where he's looking around and he's trying to kind of suss out the situation. He's like, okay, like, who are these women? What do I need to like know about them? Like, who should I be watching? And also, where the fuck are all the guns? And you can just see like the gears in his head turning super fast as he's like grabbing shit from like under the visor and like below seats. It's great. And the women are shit talking him here, which I also really love.
Yeah.
This is where we get he's a crazy schmeg who eats schlanger. So they're Furiosa's driving them to a canyon, and basically the situation is she has made a deal with this biker gang who runs this canyon. I think that's this group, this post-apocalyptic faction's entire deal is they're like, we run one canyon. This is our canyon.
They just collect tolls for the canyon.
Yeah. So she's made a deal with them where she's going to give them the gasoline that they took from the Citadel in exchange for safe passage.
Yeah. And Max goes out to rehook the pod that's carrying the gasoline because it's disconnected and they're dragging something. As he does this, Nux attacks Furiosa and tries and like wraps the chain around her neck and tries to strangle her. So Max climbs on back, hooks up the pod, finally files that mask off and gets it off 45 minutes into the movie, which I love.
And we see his gorgeous Tom Hardy mug clean shaven without those ratty dreads for the first time in this movie.
I love that they make a moment of it.
Yeah. It's great.
Nux spits in Furiosa's face and Furiosa spits in his face too. That's funny.
Is this one of the movies with the most people spitting in each other's faces?
I don't know.
Because this is one of many moments in this movie that happens. There's like, it happens more than just this. It's a very spitty movie.
And Nux falls off the cab. The
wives like kick him out, which is pretty funny. And they're like negging him here too.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, you think you're gonna fucking go to the halls of Valhalla? You're nothing but a like little war pawn, bitch.
Nux is like, shut up.
Shut up, and Morton Joe's really cool.
I'm awaited in Valhalla, shining in chrome.
He said I'm special. Earlier when I was driving next to him, he looked at me. Which is a great moment too.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
But yeah.
They pull up to the canyon. This is like they're gonna give the crazy biker gang the fuel, and in return the biker gang's gonna drop some rocks from this rock formation to close off the canyon.
Yeah, and allow them to escape free. And I like that when they're heading into the canyon, they're kind of talking about their plan. And Furiosa has basically, it seems like her strategy is the way that she has clocked Max. She's basically like, this guy will be trustworthy if I show him that I trust him first. is
Yeah.
kind of the strategy that she's taking with him.
The arc that these characters have to go through is, I think, really, really well done.
Yeah.
And it is about them trusting each other and opening up.
Yes.
And I use that term loosely.
Yes. Because these are two people who are incapable of fully opening up.
Yeah.
I think they're two people who can't allow themselves, because of the world they live in and the type of position that they occupy in that world. They can't allow themselves to experience the full range of human emotion, which is why we'll get to it maybe a little bit later, but I do think these characters do sort of have a romance in this movie. I think it is the only type of romance that these people in this world are capable of. Is sort of my read on Furiosa and Max.
Well, and I feel the same way about Nux and the wife.
Yes, that one is capable. By
Capable,
the way.
yes.
Yeah.
They have the kind of romance that only two people can have in this movie.
Yeah. And so when they're pulling up to the canyon, Furiosa's basically like, you might have to drive to Max. And this is kind of the first gesture of goodwill between the two of them. And he's basically like, okay, I'm still pointing my Glock at your head, but like, sure. And she shows him the kill switch sequence, and make sure that he has it. And then she's basically like, if I need you to gun it, what's your name so that I can yell it at you, right? And he refuses to tell.
Says you won't find out till the end of the movie.
Yeah. He
so
refuses
if you walked in late, and you missed the opening monologue, or you wandered into the wrong theater and didn't know what movie you paid a ticket for,
didn't know that you bought a ticket for a movie called Mad Max. So he refuses to tell. Well, and he does say his name at the beginning. But he says like no names or whatever, and she's like, okay, I'll just yell fool. Which I like the little moment that Hardy has when she says that, where he's like, hey, what the fuck? He kind of like gives her a look like, all right, I guess I deserved that.
Can we talk about the bikers?
Man, let's please talk about the bikers.
If I had to live in the universe of this movie, I think I'd be in this biker gang.
I really like to think that I would as well. These guys are the coolest guys in this movie, probably.
They seem really, really chill.
Yeah.
Until they're not.
Right.
Like, I think later in this movie, when they're coming back through the canyon at the end, they're just like sleeping and chilling.
They're having a little cookout. They're like cooking some stuff over a campfire, and they see like the war rig pursued by Immortan Joe's whole army coming through the canyon, and you know what they decide? Not our business.
They're kind of they're like the hippies or like nomads or something.
Yeah, they're like, not our problem. Like this is Imperator Furiosa and Immortan Joe's business. We're gonna stay out of it.
And I love all their shaggy costumes and the goggles.
Yeah.
And the motorcycle stuff in this is some of the craziest stunt work in this movie.
It's insane. The things that they're doing with these motorcycles. There are so many moments in this action sequence that's coming up where it is literally just a guy on a dirt bike jumping over a moving truck and something exploding, all happening for real, practically on camera. And I'm like, that is nuts. It is nuts that that's just a stunt guy on a dirt bike jumping over an exploding semi-trailer that has spikes and shit on it. Like, it's like, it's insane.
Yes. The plan goes sour because the bikers
are like, hey, there's a whole army after you. This isn't chill.
This isn't what we agreed on. So Furiosa yells fool, and Tom Hardy starts the truck.
Yep.
I keep calling him Tom Hardy. I should just say Max.
Max.
Max starts the war rig, and they take off, and the bikers take off in pursuit. And jumping over the war rig, dropping explosives on it.
This is there's multiple vehicle chases in this movie, tons of vehicle chases in this movie. This is maybe my favorite of the stunt driving specifically in this movie, because I love all the stuff with the stunt driving of the Immortan Joe's monster truck when it shows up, the war rig, and those dirt bike guys. It's just all amazing shit.
Yeah. The explosives that they drop start setting the engine on fire. So the solution that they have is the war rig has this big ass cow catcher on the front, and they drop it into the sand, and the sand blows and puts the fire out on the engine. I don't know if that would actually work.
I think it would. Sand puts out fire. Yeah.
I don't know if it would fuck up your engine because now your engine's full of sand. But it's cool as shit.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
There's a point here where Max is driving, Furiosa has the rifle, and Furiosa is standing out of the sunroof of this thing, shooting the bikers off of their bikes as they fly over the truck. And at one point, we just throw a motorcycle at Charlize Theron.
Yes, she is shooting them like they are clay pigeons, like someone is yelling, "Pull!" And yeah, one of these motorcycles just goes over Charlize Theron's head and she just has to duck. And there is no way they could have faked that. Someone just threw a motorcycle at Charlize Theron. It is incredible. And so eventually, like, these biker dudes do like detonate the canyon.
Yes.
And so the Immortan Joe, who has now joined up with the guys from Gastown, the People Eater, which, by the way, how many people do you have to eat to get the name the People Eater in a world where cannibalism is no doubt something of a norm?
I don't know.
This guy must be eating lots of people.
I'm also thinking that it could be a metaphorical name because he is portrayed as like a rich businessman.
In the world of Mad Max, I feel like it's not entirely metaphorical. That guy's eating people.
I mean, he's eating people both literally and figuratively.
Right.
He's also just like, his costuming is nuts. Like he has like a metal cap over his nose. Presumably he doesn't have a nose.
Yeah.
He's wearing a business suit, but there's holes cut out so he can have a chain suspended from his nipples.
Yes.
And he's also got he's also mutated or something.
I think he's just got really, really bad gout.
Yeah. He's
got the worst case of gout you've ever seen.
He's got like tree trunk feet.
Yes, yeah, or elephantiasis or something. But yeah, he those holes in his suit jacket for his nipple piercings that then have the chain connecting everything. He's rubbing his nipples at one point in this movie, which I fully forgot happened. I was like, forgot that the People Eater at one point is just straight up in a close up rubbing his own nipples. And I'm like, is that because they're like sore or is this a sexual thing? He does seem like a sex freak.
Yeah.
He has enormous, like, huge pervert energy.
Well, in the end of the movie, he runs over one of the Vuvolini.
Yes.
And
he seems to come.
He looks like he's coming.
Yes. Yeah. So that freak is there. And the bullet farmer is also there, who is wearing a judge wig made of bullets, which is so good. So they all stop kind of where these rocks have caved in the canyon. And Immortan Joe's basically like, I'm going over in my monster truck. Once you clear the rocks, you all follow me.
Yeah.
And
Nux is coming along because he was on the war rig.
Yeah.
He ripped off a piece of, I think, Splendid Ankarad's clothing. So he's riding along in the monster truck with Immortan Joe.
Yes. Yeah. And so they're in pursuit. They eventually manage to subdue all of the biker guys. They sort of get away from the biker guys, but Joe is still after him in his monster truck.
His monster truck that has a harpoon on it,
yeah,
and a flamethrower.
Yes. And I like that Rictus is like really going ham with this flamethrower. And as they get closer to the war rig, they're like, cut it with the fucking flamethrower, Rictus. You're gonna burn the wives.
The shot in the trailer that convinced me to see this movie.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen any Mad Max movies. I was a little skeptical about it. I wasn't quite the schlock connoisseur that I am today.
Yeah.
Is the monster truck jumping in front of the war rig. That was like, it's so cool. It's so cool when I watch it. I'm like, I want to see that movie. Because I know that they just jumped a monster truck in front of another truck.
Yeah.
Basically, Immortan Joe's in pursuit. He has a big ass revolver in his hand, and he starts shooting. And then Angharad, opens up the door and sort of hangs out.
Yeah.
And Angharad's pregnant. I don't know that we've mentioned this.
Oh yes, she is very pregnant, and at one point Max does shoot her in the leg.
Yeah.
Which is. it's crazy that we're just shooting pregnant ladies in this movie, but also some other shit's about to happen to a pregnant lady. Before the moment that we're at, Immortan Joe does send Nux onto the war rig.
Yes.
And this is one of the best moments of the movie. And it is talked about and memed a lot, rightfully so, because it is like such a central moment of this movie for like Nux's character. And it also tells you more about Joe too. But it's like Nux is kind of in at the window with Joe. And he's like, I know the way into the war rig. And Immortan Joe basically is like, oh, like, yeah, go do it, and you'll ride with me eternal, shiny and chrome, to the halls of Valhalla. And it's this like religious moment, right? This is Nux speaking face to face with his god, you know.
And it's clear that Immortan Joe is like, all right, kid, good luck.
Yes.
Just get this fucking fanboy away from me.
And that's the key thing, right? Is like Nux is like rapturous in this moment. And Immortan Joe's like, yeah, sure, if you can do it, here's your fucking spray paint. Have fun. Like, he just does not give a shit.
It's like asking an actor at a sci-fi or a horror convention that you've for an autograph, and then asking him to say that line from the movie that he's in.
Yeah,
he's just like, yeah, fucking ride eternal, shiny and chrome.
And so like Nux hops on the war rig, and he's still got like the chain attached to him from earlier, and it just immediately catches, and he trips and drops the revolver that Joe gave him, and we get the line from Immortan Joe, and it's just so fucking good. Mediocre. It rocks. It's so good. So Nux is on the war rig now. And then the whole thing with Angharad is hanging out of the vehicle. Joe's not going to shoot because he doesn't want to injure his wife, who is pregnant with his heir that he wants.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that moment that had your ex-girlfriend grabbing your leg.
Yes.
Where the rock hits the door of the truck. We think maybe Angharad has been taken out by this rock.
Because the harpoon that they shoot from the monster truck rips the steering wheel off. And they have to hook up a wrench to the steering wheel column to actually steer this fucking thing.
Yes, the steering wheel also pins Max's hand to the door when it flies off for a second, so they have to like wrench his hand out from under it, which is indicative of a thing that I love about this movie, which is that Max and Furiosa are two leads. This is a two-hander between the two of them.
Yeah.
Are both getting fucked up throughout this entire movie. They are getting their shit rocked.
That's what I love about this take on Max, is that I wouldn't say the first time, but in a way that the other films don't quite do, he's a lot more vulnerable in this. To the point where people were like, well, Max isn't in it enough. When the reality of these other movies is, other than the first one, it's Max wandering into someone else's story.
Yeah.
And, this is Furiosa's movie.
Yes.
This is Furiosa's movie and story, and Max is just the guy who wandered our vessel into this world. And just like the other films. But I love how vulnerable they both are for a good majority of this movie. The only way that they get out of this situation is to learn to work together. And also, they're both broken characters who have lost some hope, are looking for redemption, and they find it in each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Max fucks off because that's the
Yep.
that's this character. But I think it is masterfully done, and a lot of the action in this movie is also reminds me a lot of James Cameron.
Yeah.
But dialed up to 10, because like Cameron, a lot of the action in this movie is based on escalation, and also a thing leading into another thing, leading into another thing, leading into another thing, just like you mentioned with the choreo for the fight that Max and Furiosa have a little while ago. This leading to one of the most memorable moments of this movie, which is Angharad's death. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The harpoon ripping the steering wheel off, pinning Max's hand to the wall.
Yep. And then they have the wrench on the steering column. Furiosa and Max are both simultaneously trying to use this wrench to turn the rig. The rock hits the door and it flies off. Angharad is still on the truck. She emerges. And then she slips. I like the moment, by the way. It's a great moment for Max, where he's starting to get emotionally invested in these people.
The thumbs up.
The thumbs up. It is such a beautiful moment, and then it's just immediately like it gives you that little moment of like, oh, this is like such an endearing little moment between these two characters, and then just punches you in the gut because she falls off and that monster truck runs over her and flips and crashes.
And we flip a monster truck.
Yeah.
This monster truck flip is awesome.
It's incredible.
So Max is like, we got to keep going. She went under the wheels.
Yes.
And the women are like, we got to go back for her. And
she went under the wheels.
Max has to say everything twice.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that exchange though. It's such an emotionally powerful moment of this movie. And what it actually is two actors saying the same line of dialogue to each other twice. Because Furiosa says, did you see it? And he says, she went under the wheels. And she says, did you see it? And he says, she went under the wheels. And that moment fully encapsulates how good of a two-hander this movie is between Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. Like the fact that they just say the same line to each other twice, and it is like kind of the emotional focal point of the first act of this movie.
And they say them both those lines with different inflections, different times, so they mean different things.
Because they're great actors,
yes,
both of them. And yeah, so the wives are all very upset. They're mourning the loss of Angharad, right? And it seems like Angharad was sort of the ringleader among the wives in this escape. They kind of, the way they talk about her after she dies, it seems like she was maybe sort of the driving force behind, like, let's get the fuck out of here. Mm-hmm. So they do seem like a little bit rudderless after they lose her for a little bit, and there is sort of a conflict between them. Like Cheeto maybe wants to go back, and the rest of them are like, what the fuck are we gonna do? We get the thing with, maybe I don't know all the wives' names because I don't remember Zoe Kravitz's name, but Zoe Kravitz is a big believer in this green place that Furiosa is leading them to.
Yeah.
And some of the other wives are more skeptical about if it even exists. So there's a little bit of like tension and turmoil that Angharad's death has introduced to this group. They don't seem as cohesive as they were before.
Yeah. We also have the moment here where Furiosa is like, she's going to climb on, I love this, climbing under the rig, and she's like hooked herself up to the rig to do repairs. And then Capable finds Nux in the back of the rig.
Yeah.
And they share a moment, and Nux, this is great acting from Nicholas Hoult. Nux is really like broken up about what just happened. It's kind of his entire worldview collapsing.
He's experiencing religious trauma is what's happening,
yeah.
Right? Because the thing that is destroying him is his God saw him fail, right? He was basically like, God sent me on a holy quest and saw me fuck it up. So he's basically like fully just, he's almost catatonic with grief, sort of. And it's just really intense religious trauma. And yeah, I really like Capable comforting him and basically being like, no, it's good that you survived, and it's good that you are here with us, right? And
yeah.
She is like being very sweet to him, and she immediately sees in him that he is just kind of like a wounded, traumatized child, much the same as she is, right? And they like have an immediate bond, and they sort of have a continuing hinted at sort of sweet little romance for the rest of the movie. That's never like a focus of the movie, but just anytime he's like got her arm around her and she's like resting her head on his chest, it's all like very sweet and very nice stuff between the two of them.
Yes, I think so too. It's nighttime now.
Yes. Which means it's blue.
Which means it's the blue portion of the movie.
The blue movement of the movie.
This is the best day for night photography I've seen in any motion picture that is also very clearly day for night photography.
Yeah, it doesn't even really try to fool you.
No.
It's basically like, it's night because it's blue, And it's like, yeah, great, I buy it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everything in this movie is heightened and romanticized and amped up to 11. So the fact that in this world, nighttime just means everything's fucking blue, cool. I'll rock with it. It's fucking great.
Yeah.
the war party gets stuck in the mud, and Herod is dying. So I want to call out again, Angus Sampson is the organic mechanic.
Yes.
Doesn't have enough to do in this movie, but is awesome. He's cutting out the baby.
Child, yeah, from Herod, because she was like 9 months pregnant. It seemed like she was about to go into labor right before she died.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, this kid's ready to pop out.
I love him like playing with the umbilical cord and flipping it.
He's also,
you may have had give it another month. You may have had a viable human.
He's also gotta be, his skills must be incredibly important to Immortan Joe for Joe to allow this man to speak to him like this, because he's sort of taunting Joe. Joe's basically like, was it a boy? And he's like, oh yeah, you little heir here, too bad he's fucking dead. and I'm like, I would be worried for my life talking to this guy this way, but he seems very secure. It's just very funny that apparently his skills are so indispensable that he can just say whatever the fuck he wants.
I think organic also seems like a good hang.
Yeah,
like you get a couple beers into this guy, you're gonna have a good night.
Yeah. He is one of the more affable of the disgusting shit people in this movie for sure. But yeah, so like they're the Max and everybody, their rig is stuck. Immortan Joe and his war party are trying to figure out how they're going to navigate the swamp to go get him. And what happens is basically the bullet farmer volunteers to like go in and just cap Furiosa.
Yeah, Bullet Farmer has a muscle car with tank treads, which fucking rules.
The bullet farmer is possibly my favorite guy in this movie. I fucking love the bullet farmer.
Would you say that he's the coolest man who's ever lived?
I don't know if I'd say that necessarily.
Okay, we won't play Angel of Death then.
Yeah. But because he's not cool, because he's the military industrial complex, and that's bad. But it's just like, this character is, the performance is fucking unhinged and over the top, as most of the performances are in this movie, and just his design is perfect. The moment with him that we're about to get to is just one of my favorite things in any movie ever.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when we were introduced to him earlier, he seems really annoyed that he had to wake up.
Yeah.
Someone woke him up this morning and was like, you got to go on a car chase.
Yeah, he's like, all this over family drama.
But what happens here is he's shooting into the darkness.
Yes.
He has a spotlight.
He pulls a bullet that is one of his teeth out of his mouth and loads it into his gun to say he's going to go get Furiosa. And yeah, he just then takes off and starts shooting.
Yeah. And there's a spotlight on top of his car. And Furiosa shoots it out with the rifle and it blinds him. And it seems like once he's blinded, he's like, he's really excited about going on this little quest.
He can now truly just spray and pray, which is all the bullet farmer ever wanted. He's like, I can't even see where I'm pointing this shit anymore. Great.
When he woke up this morning, someone like clearly he fell off the bed or woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but getting blinded was the thing that he needed to wake up.
Yes. So this is where he screams gun fever and is just firing these machine guns wildly into this fog. And we get here such...
I got it.
Yeah,
you don't have to look it up.
Yes, please, yeah.
I am the scales of justice, the conductor of the choir of death. Sing, brother heckler! Sing, brother cock! Sing! Sing!
Because he's firing heckler and cock MP5s.
Yes.
Into the darkness, completely blinded, and it's fucking nuts.
This is maybe my favorite thing that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, that's the reason cinema was invented.
And then so while this is happening, they're trying to get the rig unstuck. Furiosa and company are trying to get the rig unstuck by hauling it out with a tree. They're attaching the rig to a tree and using it to pull the rig out of the mud. I also like that Nux doesn't know what a tree is.
Yes.
He's like, that thing, and she's like, what, you mean the tree?
What Max tells them to do is like, take the rig a bit down the track, and I'm going to head off into the darkness.
Yeah.
And this is I think another great character moment that tells you everything you need to know about Max, and his relationship with Furiosa, and you don't need anything else. And she says, you know, like, what if you're not back? And he says, well, you keep going.
Yeah. Like, it's a no-brainer to him.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, of course you protect yourselves and them, right?
Yeah.
And don't worry about me, you know? And he goes off into the fog, and one of my favorite decisions that this movie makes is that you don't see him kill the bullet farmer. He goes off into this fog, Furiosa sees a huge explosion, and then he walks back with the steering wheel and with like a bag of stuff that he has salvaged, including a boot for Nux, because he stole one of Nux's boots earlier.
Very thoughtful.
Yeah. And his face is covered in blood, and it's such a good moment. It's again a moment like what you were talking about before, where this movie has to give us time to breathe, right? And it's like, we could give you another fucking balls to the wall action sequence with Max taking out the bullet farmer, but instead, let's take a second. Let's breathe. Let's do a big exhale here, and we'll give you a break for this one, because there's going to be more of this shit coming. You're going to get enough of it in this movie, so like, this one you can sit out. And I'm like, genius. I fucking love that they did that.
I think this portion of the movie at nighttime, other than the chases, might be my favorite bit of action, like you said with the fight, the fist fight that Furiosa and Max have.
Yeah.
Because it is so understated, and it's focused on character down to the point when when Max hands the rifle to Furiosa and lets her use his shoulder to stabilize her aim. The stuff with the bullet farmer going crazy is great, and then just the fact that he wanders off into the darkness and we don't see it. It's all really well done and really well paced, and also still intense and keeps up the intensity. But again, it's a different type of intensity.
Totally.
It's just slightly adjusting the speed of the movie.
Yep.
And I think it's really great.
One thing that I do want to touch on briefly at the end of this nighttime sequence is, so Max comes back from killing the bullet farmer, and he's got the blood on his face. And one of the wives mentions the blood on Max's face and is like, oh, you're bleeding. And Furiosa says that's not his blood. And he goes to wash it off, and he opens one of the taps on the side of the tanker, and it's one of the things that they were hauling to the bullet farm and to Gastown to trade with is human breast milk. And he washes the blood off of his face with human breast milk. And I'm not going to attempt right now, because it would be 20 minutes long, to explain why I think this is a perfect example of thematic language in visual art. But man, what a fucking visual moment. Just this man with his face covered in another man's blood, washing it away with human breast milk, with mother's milk. It's just, to me, that is the visual that sums up the themes of this movie in like one image. And then the nighttime sequence is basically over. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like the weird guys on the stilts.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
That's my contribution to the end of the nighttime sequence.
Okay. I need more information about these guys, George Miller. I hope in Furiosa we revisit the swamp guys on the stilts, because what the fuck is that?
I think they fall into that sub category of characters where their job is mud.
Yeah,
I think they're just, their job is mud.
But their job is mud on stilts.
Mud on stilts.
Yes.
It makes it easier for them to walk around the mud and then do whatever sort of mud-related activities.
I guess so. Yes, the mud people on the stilts. I hope they make an appearance in the upcoming prequel to this film. And yeah, so then it's daytime.
Yeah. There's a scene between Furiosa and Max talking a little bit about their past, and it's perfect because we don't need anything else. Again, just like Furiosa says, she's looking for redemption. The green places where she came from as a child before she was captured. Nux eats a bug.
Yes. That's kind of a sweet moment too, because this is when he has his arm around. It's weird to say that a guy eating a bug is a sweet moment, but he has his arm around capable sleeping with her head on his chest, and he kind of this bug is crawling, I think, on Capable's arm, and he puts his hand out, and the bug starts crawling on him, and he sort of looks at it for a second, and it's kind of this moment of him like appreciating this life, and then he's like, but also I have to eat this because that's the world I live in. And it's it's just like a nice little moment in this movie that again it's like a little visual that also just has a lot of thematic juice to it.
And it's also funny because
guy
eat a bug.
Yes.
A way to get a hell yeah reaction out of me is to have a movie where a guy eats a bug.
Yeah, this movie opens with a guy eating a lizard, and you better believe that a guy also eats a bug.
More movies should do that.
Yeah.
So we meet the Vuvolini here. These are the warrior tribe of women that Furiosa comes from. We get the meme where that's bait.
That's bait.
Where there's a naked woman on top of
she's like in a cage.
Yeah, it's like a cage on there's like power lines nearby. Like the power line towers.
She's screaming for help, and he's like, "Okay, this is a trap if I've ever seen one."
And Furiosa says, "I'm Furiosa of my mother was so and so, the tribe of so and so."
Like she's in Lord of the Rings, she gives her whole lineage.
Her titles.
Yes, Aragorn, son of Arathorn,
and a bunch of old ladies on motorbikes right out of the dust.
And the Vuvolini whip ass.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that the movie doesn't give us a little bit more of them, or doesn't. We don't get to know them as much.
I feel like Furiosa is going to fix some of that though.
Yeah,
which is like, I understand why they chose that as a sequel or a prequel story rather for this franchise, because it's like this movie kind of does tease you with the Vuvolini, and you do want to see more of them. And I feel like Miller knew that and is like, okay, that's coming.
And I guess a lot of these older ladies just did their own stunts, which fucking rules.
Yeah. So they embrace Furiosa, and remember her from when she was a child, and so they give her a very warm welcome. It's a very beautiful, poignant, emotional moment in this movie for Furiosa's character. It's nice seeing her kind of soften in their presence, because she has been hard, right? She has been like iron in this movie, and then when she's embraced by these women, suddenly you get to see her humanity, and it's really beautiful. And I also love that the Vuvolini like immediately, because they don't know who Immortan Joe's wives are, but they don't ask about any of them. They say, who are the two men?
Yes.
Right? Because immediately they like clock who Furiosa is with, and they're like, we don't need to worry about those girls. Who are the men? And I'm like, perfect.
Well,
great.
Yeah, because they understand the role that men often take in this world.
In this world, right? Which this world is not as different from the world we live in as we might like to pretend it is, right? It's like, I understand that reaction even in the world we live in. Who are those men? Right? Because it's like, I don't have a problem with all men, right? We're not going to just kill them on sight, but we need to know what those guys' deal is. Because it's like, you just can't trust a man you don't know if you are a woman, either in the Mad Max world or our world.
And I think this movie, like a lot of science fiction, like horror, like action movies, is partially portraying women as strong women who have survived trauma.
Yeah.
And surviving that trauma has therefore made them strong. A little bit, but I think the movie makes the wise decision to not define any of the women in this movie by their trauma. Yes,
I agree with that. Like there is the element of like the wives are all victims of sexual assault, sexual violence. There's the really striking visual representation of that, which is the chastity belts that they wear, which presumably only Joe has the key to unlock, that have spikes on them, so that if any other man tries to invade his property as he sees it, their dick will be shredded, right? It's a very striking visual thing that the camera lingers on long enough for you to understand the full implications of all that.
Yes.
And they don't talk about it.
With
right?
they don't spend any more time than they need to on it.
Yes, but so like with the wives' characters, you do have some of that. These women have experienced trauma and are empowered to overcome it. I agree with you. I think the wise choice this movie makes is also having the Vuvolini here, who don't have that as their backstory. These are powerful, capable women who are powerful and capable, divorced from any kind of tragic backstory that we know about them. Like, we don't get to learn their backstories. They just are badasses.
There's a lot that we can imply based on the way that this world is, and Furiosa was sold into slavery and captured, and perhaps that's happened to other members of the tribe. And the other thing that we learn is that the Green Place was destroyed.
Yep.
The environment was destroyed, and that they actually passed through it. That was the muddy area
with all the crows.
and that the rest of the Vuvolini have died off, and this is the last remaining group
left. And the Furiosa's moment where she absorbs all of that and basically realizes that she has been taking these women that she rescued to a place that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that her home is gone.
Yeah.
Is great.
Yeah.
Great moment of her just screaming in the sand.
Yeah, she walks up a dune to go scream.
Yep.
Which is, I relate to that.
I feel like I could use a good dune scream. I feel like that might help me work through some stuff.
But there's this thing of like, they're strong because they've survived together, and they've lost people along the way, but they still have each other. And that's the home. That's the Green Place that Furiosa has to learn to accept.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's not about where the Green Place is.
Yeah.
It's about community.
Yeah.
Yep.
What if the real Green Place was their friends we made along the way?
That's truly, yeah. Yeah. And so there's a nighttime sequence here where the Vuvolini and Furiosa and the wives are all sort of deciding, what to do. Furiosa takes Max aside and is like, "Can I talk to you?" And she says, "We're going to ride into the salt flats. We're going to take as much of the resources that are on the war rig as possible on our motorcycles and just drive and see if we can find something better than all this." So I said earlier, I have heard the opinion that people like that there's not a romance between Furiosa and Max in this movie. I've already tipped my hand and said I sort of think there is. It's just the only type of romance that these two people in this world can have, because these are two people who not just won't, but can't open up emotionally.
Yeah, they're fundamentally broken.
Yes, these are two broken people who are pretty much incapable of love in the traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
They have to connect to each other through survival and through like their adeptitude, their utilitarianism, right? Basically they can recognize each other's skill, and that is like sort of the most they will allow themselves to bond. But I do think her saying, "There is a motorcycle for you if you want it," right? One of the bikes is for you, is sort of the closest she can get to "I love you."
Yeah.
In a way, because if you think about what that means, that is a motorcycle that otherwise they wouldn't have to bring. And that means gas that they wouldn't have to use, water that somebody else could be drinking, food somebody else could be eating. And her saying, "I want you to come with us. One of the bikes is yours if you want it," is her saying, "I love you and I want you around." And
she's going off into the desert with women who she knows and trusts, who have experienced trauma at the hands of men, and she herself has experienced trauma at the hands of men. And this is the one man that, for all we know, she has come across who she can trust.
Yeah.
And so the fact of her letting him into her little family, is a big moment.
Yeah, and so maybe romance is the wrong read on this. Maybe she doesn't have romantic feelings for him, but the point I'm trying to get at,
they don't kiss and fuck,
right? But
that way they're not a romance,
right? And I kind of think maybe they would want to if that was something that either of these people were capable of at this point in their lives. But like it's just that's so far down on the priorities list
Yeah.
for both of them. But maybe not. Right? Maybe they don't even have kiss and fuck feelings for each other. But regardless, so maybe romance is the wrong word. But what I do think is between them, I think these two people, by this point in this movie, love each other. I think they love each other. And I think he's resisting it more than she is at this point because he's not going to go.
Yeah. And it's such a great arc because, you know, whatever, 2 days ago, they met each other trying to kill each other.
Yep.
And they've had to learn to trust each other throughout the course of this movie.
Yeah.
And so much of that is shown visually and without dialogue. And to piggyback off of your romance thing, there is a chemistry that they share. They're on the same wavelength. They can anticipate each other in a way that two people who are romantically involved would.
Yeah.
They just do it through the action sequences,
through guns,
through handing guns to each other, reloading guns,
yeah,
controlling the war rig together.
Yes, him being her sniper mount. It's like that's hot.
That's fucking.
It's hot, right?
Yeah.
Like it is sexy when he uses his shoulder as her sniper mount, and yeah, that's sort of the thing that I'm also getting at with the romance thing. It's like, yeah, no, this is like, it is hot. The chemistry between the two of them, despite the fact that they almost never physically touch unless they're punching each other.
Yeah. Max has a PTSD flashback about the people who he couldn't save.
Yes, and one of them calls him daddy, the little girl that he's been hallucinating, or dad. And so I'm like, is this a daughter, or is this just someone who is calling him dad? There's like a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know. Movie doesn't explore it.
Yeah.
It's not explored in any of the other films.
Yeah.
I know there were comic books that were released. They did a Furiosa origin comic. I'm wondering how much the new movie is gonna borrow from that book or anything like that. But maybe they did an origin comic for this this part of the story, but it doesn't matter because it's all thematic. And Max basically realizes that this is his family now too, or at least he has found some hope. He said, like, I think when he's talking to Furiosa that night, he says, like, don't put your trust in hope, don't put your faith in hope.
Yeah.
But now this is convincing him to maybe rethink things.
Yeah.
And his big idea is, let's make a U-turn. Most high-stakes U-turn of all time.
Yeah.
Max basically says, and there's great stuff with Max here, too. And,
yeah.
This is probably the most dialogue that Tom Hardy has in a row in the movie.
Yep. And he's convincing Furiosa to go back.
Yeah.
And he says, he's pointing out, like, you know, if you keep going that way, he says, I guarantee you, if you go 160 days in that direction, it's nothing but salt. And I'm like, I believe him. I bet he's been over there. He knows there's nothing that way. Yeah, but there's a great moment with Furiosa here, where a thing that she said before when they were doing their little backstory chat is that she's looking for redemption, right? And he says that by turning around and taking the Citadel and using the water and the crops that they already know exist, right? There might be a chance for both of us at redemption, he says to her. And I think her saying, we got a bike for you, is her saying, I love you. And I think that line from him is saying, I love you too. I think is what that moment's about.
Okay.
He's basically like, you opened up to me. I recognized a kindred spirit in you. I want to give you an opportunity to live the best life you can in this hell that we live in, and I love you too, and let's do this thing.
And the redemption for her is obviously to build some kind of family, build some kind of society, build a better future for her and these women.
Yeah.
And the redemption for him is to find something to live for again and find something worth saving.
Yes.
So he can then ride off into the sunset to his next adventure.
Yes, and crucially, the ghosts that are haunting him are the ghosts of the people that he was unable to save.
Yeah.
Right? And he sees a choice here where he's like, I could just ride off into the sunset now and let them go out into the salt flats and fucking die, or I could help save them. Right? And and that's what all the visions that you were talking about are about, right?
So his idea is let's just go back the way we came through the canyon.
And blow the canyon
blow the
behind
canyon
us.
up.
Yep.
And one of the Vuvolini comments on that, and he kind of does a point, and he's like, yeah, you're right.
You got it.
And that's kind of like the thumbs up from earlier.
You're picking up what I'm putting down.
I like that a lot.
It's a great moment.
And then we catch up with the war party. Everyone's just fucking hanging out.
Yeah.
The Doof Warrior is asleep in his guitar harness thing. He's wearing a new pair of Converse.
Yes.
I noticed that this second time around. I thought that was very funny.
I think the Doof Warrior is one of the most prized members of Immortan Joe's society, right? If you're from the Citadel, the Doof Warrior is like royalty. Right?
To you, I bestow my finest pair of high tops. Chuck Taylor All-Stars.
Yeah. He's also wearing a red onesie as well.
Yeah.
He's wearing a red onesie and Chucks.
And everyone's like, oh, shit, it's the fucking war rig.
And a bag over his head, by the way, which will come back.
Yeah.
But yes, oh shit, it's the war rig. And Immortan Joe realizes they're heading toward the canyon. He basically susses out their plan immediately.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, they're going to fucking blow it behind us. They know the Citadel's undefended. They're going back to the Citadel! So they all get in their fucking crazy trucks and shit and make off in pursuit.
Yeah, Slits in Max's pursuit special.
That's mine!
That's mine!
Which has now been outfitted with harpoons, a new engine that has a skull on it that fucking rules.
Yeah, there's skulls all over all the vehicles in this movie, and it's always awesome.
And it's got spike traps on the back.
Yeah.
We get some insane stuff from Slit here of like, and this actor just like hanging off of the side of this car.
Yeah, just like
it's
laughing.
So cool.
And,
I love him so much.
Yep.
The character is not in Furiosa, but the actor's coming back to play a different role, which tends to happen in these movies.
Great.
Cool. Would love to see what this guy does.
Awesome. Yeah, so like these the war parties of the Bullet Farmer, the Gas Town, and the Citadel are all in pursuit. So they got they got 3 whole armies after them, basically. They're driving into this canyon. This is where we sort of see the biker dudes kind of just chilling.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, that's weird.
Playing
not
hacky
our
sack
business.
and smoking weed and
playing Bob Marley. I shot the sheriff. But yeah, and this is the climactic battle sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
We got the Gastown guys on the poles. They call them polecats.
fucking polecats.
Yep, they're on these poles that are waving back and forth so that they can drop down onto the roofs of other vehicles. It's insane and incredible, and those were actually just stuntmen on poles, which is nuts in a lot of shots.
What I like about the sequence is the same thing that I like about the chase at the end of the Road Warrior. Which is the Road Warrior is kind of the inception point for Fury Road, where George Miller said, let's just do the Road Warrior times 100.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about this final sequence is all of our heroes immediately start dying.
Yeah.
The Vuvolinis just start getting taken out one after another.
Yeah, there's a great moment with one of the Vuvolini. She's sort of, at least visually, the youngest one of the Vuvolini.
Yes,
she was the one that was in the cage.
Yeah, I think her name is Valkyrie.
Yeah,
and she has she gets knocked off of her bike, and she has this lever gun.
Yes, and if Immortan Joe's windshield was not bulletproof, she would have headshot him 3 times. Which I fucking love that her aim is so good, and it's just because it's bulletproof glass that this isn't working. And he like tries to run her down. She like ducks under the vehicle. There's another one of the Vuvolini on the ground with her, and they like huddle together, and the car goes over them, and they're unscathed. And then the fucking people eater fucking runs her down and comes his pants.
It comes his pants. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And there's just so much great shit here. There's moments where the polecats are dropping down. One of the wives gets grabbed. It's
Zoe Kravitz gets grabbed, and she's in the Giga Horse with Immortan Joe.
Yes. So and Immortan Joe holds up one finger. He's like, I got one of them. only 3 more to go because one fucking died.
We get the Chekhov shifter knife comes back.
Yes.
This progression of events is so cool.
Yeah.
So she stabs a guy with the shift knife, which the end of the shifter has like a femur
Yeah.
on it, and then it's just a spike that she pulls out of the shifter. She stabs this guy who has like this black mask on. He falls kind of off the back of the rig and he's hanging on. And then he climbs back up. Max falls off of the top of the rig because he's fighting like this chainsaw guy, which
Yeah.
I love that we're swinging around chainsaws in this movie.
If you didn't think people were getting murdered with chainsaws in this movie, think again, because we see at least one person get chainsawed in this movie. Which, by the way, I will allow you to continue with your progression of events here in a moment, but just brief sidebar. If you can imagine anything being used as a post-apocalyptic weapon, it is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There are fucking cables, ropes, chains, chainsaws. I feel like there's pipes and crowbars. Like, all of it.
Yeah.
It's impossible to overstate how many fucking weapons there are in this movie. Continue.
Yes. The chainsaw's so good, though.
Yeah.
I love that.
They're great. I like that they're like those landscaping, like the ones that you use to cut off tree limbs. They're not like the big ones. They're like the ones you can use with one hand. It's great.
Yeah. Max falls off the side of the rig. Furiosa grabs him with her prosthetic arm. So she's hanging onto Max while she's driving. The guy that she stabbed with the shifter climbs back into the cab and stabs her in the stomach, and then the Keeper of the Seeds shoves a bullet into his eye.
Yes.
And stabs him with a bullet and presumably kills him.
Yes.
And kills him. And it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. At some point, the Keeper of the Seeds is also mortally wounded.
Yes.
I don't know if that's here or
she's hit at some point, and she's kind of fading in and out, it seems like.
Yeah.
And she sort of just dies while all of this is happening.
Yeah, I think it's slightly before this too, but a moment that I wanted to call out is maybe my favorite kill of this movie, which is one of the polecats descends on the war rig, and Max has gotten one of these crossbows that shoots those explosive bolts, and shoots this polecat in the chest, and his chest just explodes and his ribs are fully exposed, and then he like swings back away from the war rig as a fucking corpse tethered to this pole. It rocks so hard.
I also love Slit gets the car he's on gets crushed.
Yeah.
In between the war rig and the people eater, who has a similar like semi truck kind of thing going on.
Yeah, he's got like a luxury car on top of his semi truck for him to sit in, presumably because his gout riddled body needed a comfy seat to sit in.
Yeah. and then I think this is when Max gets onto the poles that the polecats are using.
Yeah.
And lands in the people eater's car.
Yes.
And uses him as a human shield as Immortan Joe shoots at him.
This guy is an S-tier human shield.
Yeah, this guy's fucking huge.
You really want a people eater type body as your human shield if you're gonna have to use one. It's just accept no substitutes.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy gets fucking ground up into ground beef
and to the
with
point,
these bullets.
And to the point that we were talking about earlier where the heroes get fucked up severely in this movie, Furiosa and Max. Max is using the People Eater as a human shield, but he has one of his hands on the front of the People Eater's body. One of those bullets goes through Max's hand into the People Eater. So it's like he just gets shot through the hand. And then I believe his other hand is the one that gets the fucking bolt through it.
Yes.
That sticks it to his forehead in this sequence as well. So he's just got holes in both hands, like Jesus Christ at the end of this movie. He's got stigmata.
And then the fucking incredible shot of the People Eater's truck blowing up as Max is back on the pole. Yeah. You see the whole convoy.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, dude. It fucking rolls. Max also fights the Doof Warrior.
Yes.
We were finally using the flamethrower on the guitar and stuff.
You're correct in saying Max fights the Doof Warrior. I don't think the Doof Warrior is fighting Max. I think the Doof Warrior only wants to continue shredding.
And Max is just interrupting his riffs.
He's just in the way of shredding. So he's basically just like, oh, must have guitar.
Yeah, but we're whacking people with a guitar, and that's fun.
And flames shoot out of the guitar. He's using it as like a flamethrower.
They built a real guitar that shot flames.
It's fucking nuts.
Of course they did.
It's incredible. It's all the coolest things that have ever happened in the history of the universe.
Yeah. Furiosa climbs onto the Giga Horse to kill Immortan Joe.
Yes,
as Max is fighting Rictus on top of the war rig.
And crucially, Cheeto, who is the wife who, after Angharad died, was like, maybe we should just go back. We weren't treated that bad. Yes, we were being sexually assaulted, but also we had food and water, right? She kind of had that mentality at an earlier point in the movie, and she asks Rictus to take her. She's basically like, hey, Rictus, like, take me. I'll jump onto the what's it called? The monster truck?
The Giga Horse.
The Giga Horse. She's asking for him to take
It's
her
the only
onto the
one that I know what the name of it is, other than the war rig.
onto the Giga Horse. But we learn that she has had some character development. She's grown a little bit because this is a ploy from her.
Yes.
And she's the one who gets Furiosa onto the Giga Horse. So she's basically being like, oh, take me. I want to go back home. And then it's like, actually, I'm smuggling in this lady who's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. Max, this is the part when Max starts beating Rictus with the air tanks on his back, which is fun.
Yeah, there's Max v. Rictus, which is great. I love Rictus just grabbing Tom Hardy's face, and his hand, this actor is enormous. His hand is the same size as Tom Hardy's head. So he just like grabs his whole head in his hand and shoves him at one point, which I love to see. And yeah, like one of the Vuvolini shoots one of the oxygen tanks. He's beating him over the head with it. It's fucking incredible. It
so
is.
Cool.
And then, so Zoe Kravitz is in the cab with Immortan Joe, and Joe is like dealing with her because she's like putting up a fight or whatever. And then he turns to the window, and Furiosa is like climbing to the side of the driver window, and she's got like one of those like harpoon things, and she latches it onto his fucking breathing mask, and goes, "Remember me?" and fucking sends the cable for the harpoon into the tire, and it rips that mask off his face. We get a lot of blood and guts, and R.I.P. Immortan Joe.
One of the most iconic villains of the past decade, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
and a great ending for him.
Great kill.
Yes.
And I love that we don't see his face until the very end when they show it back at the Citadel. But we never see him without the mask on.
Yep.
Other than that, and a great late career performance from the dearly departed Hugh Keays-Byrne.
Yeah.
Coming back to the Mad Max franchise. A masterclass of writing, of costuming and character design, and an incredible performance.
Yeah. A thing that did occur to me is that he sort of is a little Baron Harkonnen, and I mean that as a compliment, because to your point,
well, he's kind of the heavy metal Darth Vader too.
Yeah. He's in that tier of villain.
Yeah.
Right? He's up there with Baron Harkonnen and Darth Vader. You know, he's like one of those most iconic. You know, you love to hate them. You know, it rocks, and he's dead. And so with Immortan Joe dispatched, they're feeling pretty good about this. They're like, okay, now it's time to go back to the Citadel. But Rictus, who has been like knocked unconscious in his fight with Max, is not dead.
Yeah, Rictus just won't die here.
Yeah, so he gets up, and before he gets up, the last wife who is on. Because at some point, the Dag, I think it's after the Keeper of the Seeds dies.
Yeah.
The Dag grabs the seeds, and she's crawling over to join the other wives. And the last wife to go over to the Giga Horse and join everybody else is Capable. And she is like climbing out of the cab, and Nux is driving the war rig.
Nux has been driving the war rig this whole time.
Yeah. And because Furious got too wounded to do it. So Capable is like leaving, and they have a little goodbye, which like they don't know it's going to be their last goodbye, but she is concerned about him.
He's like, you go ahead and cross, and then I'll come after you. You know?
I'll gun it and
come after you. And this is the moment that I watched this movie twice, and I will say that I almost cried both times watching this.
I did not cry during this movie, but I was close like you were here. Yeah.
This I think this the death of Nux is pretty beautifully done.
Yeah.
And another moment in this movie that is just kind of again beautiful. I don't have a better fucking word for this.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this movie for God knows how long.
2.5 hours
I'm
about.
losing my ability to speak. And Rictus basically rips the engine off of the war rig.
Yes, and holds it aloft, screaming his own name, which is very funny.
It's very cool. And Nux is like, once again, we're all going to hell tonight.
Yep.
And Nux looks at Capable, and Capable's looking back at him, and she's on the Giga Horse.
Yes, it's very much a moment specifically between the two of them, which I love.
And he reaches out to her, and he just says under his breath, "Witness me," and he flips the war rig.
Yep, because there's still some of Immortan Joe's troops behind them in pursuit. So by doing this, by crashing the war rig, he's causing like basically a massive pileup that is going to kill all these guys and allow them to escape.
Yeah, and they're passing under another rock formation too. So he'll create a seal in the canyon.
Yep.
And the music is great. Nicholas Hoult's performance is great.
Yes. The actress who plays Capable, who unfortunately I did not take down the name of, is also great here.
Yeah.
She looks so heartbroken in this moment. She's reaching out to him as this happens.
I'm heartbroken too, because this is the thing that Nux has always wanted.
Yes.
And of the war boy culture has always wanted is to die a glorious death and be awaited in Valhalla, and to have someone see it and witness it and recognize it. This is the thing he's always longed for, but now he's dying for the right reasons.
Yes.
He flips the truck and it's fucking great.
Yep.
Even this, the CGI stuff line of the camera.
Yeah.
Maybe the weakest shot in this movie.
Yes, but as I said before, still very good. The worst the CGI gets is very good.
And honestly, I didn't even mind it that much. Both times I watched it,
Me
it looks even better in black and white.
I believe
the effects look much better. But with Junkie XL's music and that kind of emotional orchestral theme from the Sandstorm is reprised here. And the performance from Nicholas Hoult, and it's a great moment. So Furiosa's dying because she's been stabbed by her own
shifter knife.
Her own shifter knife. And Max gives her a blood transfusion.
Yeah, because as we've learned, he's a universal donor. And the way that this whole scene is done, this is also a moment in this movie where I could see myself crying.
Yeah.
I didn't this time, but I could easily imagine it happening. Because he has been a grunting, closed off, shell of a human being for most of this movie. And when she's dying, he gets so tender with her. When he's pulling the knife out of her, I just love him saying, "I'm so sorry," and I love when he thinks that she's going to die. Right before he starts the transfusion, he's just saying no, like over and over and over again, because he's like, I can't lose you. And part of it is the thing where it's like he can't let another person down who he's trying to protect, because that's like the visions that have been haunting him. But I also think it's like, I love you, please stay with me is part of it there. And he's holding her really close to his face at one point, and she just whispers home to him a couple times, and it's just like, oh, it's such a gorgeous little moment of this movie, and it's a really good climax.
Yep. And then he introduces himself to her finally.
Yes.
Max. My name is Max.
Yeah. Which is
it's really good.
It's a really good moment of this movie. And then they go back to the Citadel. I like that there's not really ever a moment where the movie is trying to fake you out that maybe Furiosa died.
Yeah.
Once he does the blood transfusion, you as the audience are like, she's going to be fine.
Yeah, she's fine.
Yeah.
It's really more about a character moment for the two of them.
Yes, exactly.
They show that they show the war boy, the remaining war boys, the sick war boys, and the younger ones.
Yes, the war
that
pups.
are left behind, the war pups. The dead body of Immortan Joe, who has just been cooking on the hood of this monster truck the whole drive back.
Yep, and the whole lower half of his face is ripped off. And the disgusting shit people crowd, once they see that Immortan Joe has died, come to rend him limb from limb. They just start ripping this corpse apart, which is great. And like the war pups are watching it through binoculars, being like, "Oh shit,
Yeah.
we thought that guy was God."
Yep. They lower the elevator and the Gigahorse, and everyone gets on it. And the women who are still at the Citadel, who Morton Joe has used to create breast milk, they release the water.
Yep.
And everyone gets as much water as they want.
Yep.
The elevator rises up. Everyone's like chanting Furiosa's name. And Max slips off the elevator at some point.
Yep.
Into the crowd and gives a nod of respect to Furiosa and walks off into the crowd.
Yep.
And she looks back.
She nods back.
Nods back.
And the last shot of the movie is Furiosa and the wives ascending on this elevator as Max is escaping through the crowd, and that's the end of the movie.
Yep. And it ends with a quote from an in-universe thing that isn't really explained. Says, "Where must we go, we who wander this wasteland in search of our better selves?"
Attributed to the
first
history man.
Which I think is, if I remember what I heard correctly, he's like a man who has the history of the world like tattooed on his body.
Oh,
that's how they preserve. That's how they preserve history and stories. Again, it's probably a comic book thing. I don't remember. Maybe it'll be in Furiosa. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's Academy Award winning Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
Justus.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask you a stupid question.
Yeah, I can't wait for this very stupid question.
This is the greatest movie ever made.
David, yes, it's the greatest movie ever made. I don't feel the need to elaborate because we've talked about it. Yes, it's for all of the reasons aforementioned, it is the greatest movie ever made. David, is Mad Max Fury Road the greatest movie ever made?
Justus, this movie has a monster truck with a harpoon and a flamethrower on it, and that's not even in the top 25 cool things in this movie.
Yeah.
Fucking no shit. It's the greatest movie ever made. I'm offended you would even ask me.
Well, I had to ask you because you asked me.
And that's the conceit of the show.
Yeah.
You're just doing your job. It's one of the greatest action films ever made, one of the greatest movies ever made, the best Mad Max film. It is perfect in every way. It is mythological and primal and elemental and lyrical and poetic. There's so much to enjoy and love about it that the only thing I can say is stop this episode and just go fucking watch it.
Yeah. If you have never seen it, what the fuck are you doing with your life? And if you have seen it, it's time to go back to it. I think upon this most recent watch of it, this movie is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I actually just switched the list around a little bit. This I think is right below Alien. So we have covered two of my all-time favorites, the upper crust of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah.
And this is an amazing addition to that list. And an amazing addition to the show that I'm really glad that we got the chance to talk about.
Yes.
Next week, we're talking about Willow.
We are talking about Ron Howard's Willow from 1988. I almost said 86 because I almost couldn't read. We're talking about Ron Howard's Willow from 1988, a fantasy film starring Warwick Davis and Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer is basically Aragorn in this movie.
Val Kilmer's in this?
Yes,
thing?
it's basically Warwick
Cool.
Davis as more or less Bilbo and Val Kilmer as more or less Aragorn in a sort of Lord of the Rings ripoff, but not in a way that is bad, in a way that Roxanne is good.
Okay, I've never seen this thing.
This is another this is a type of movie that we cover on this show from time to time, a certified Justus Burkett childhood classic. So join us next week for Willow, directed by Ron Howard.
In the meantime,
also I think story by George Lucas, by the way.
Yeah, because it's Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
George, oh man, he might be making an appearance. We'll see.
I hope not. God, I hope not.
In the meantime, tell your friends about the show, tweet about the show, talk about the show, spread the word about a show. maybe make some flyers and spread them around town.
Yes, if
hire a town crier.
Hear ye, hear ye.
One of those skywriting things.
The Greatest Movie Ever Made podcast is a good podcast that you should listen to.
Send a message in a bottle across
if
the sea.
you manage to get us 5 more listeners for our show, you will ride with us in Valhalla. Is shiny and chrome. So fucking do that.
Yeah, we've been sitting at like 40 followers for a long time.
Yeah, I know.
But that's
and
okay.
we appreciate all 40 of you. To be
Yes,
clear.
we do.
Yes.
Show's over.
That's
Goodbye.
It. Yep.
See you later.
Later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.